Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
The Return of Joyboy by TheIntrovertRin. A story in which Luffy is the child of sea. The secrets of Luffy are unveiled slowly, which gives heart attack to people. Member list. Garrick Russell, Warlord. Black Money Young Lion, Warlord. KSG PL4YZ, Warlord. King Nemo, Warlord. Zach Travis, Warlord. Adios.
That man is. Don Krieg, it's him. He has come to kill all of us. The Krieg pirates started panicking and running like headless chickens on the remaining deck of the ship. Some even tried to get as far as possible by swimming to avoid the said man. It can't be. Is that hawk-eyed man? Zoro asked in shock. But he knew deep within that he is. Damn it. One of the Krieg pirates cursed at the sight of the man. What did we do to you? Why the hell do you have to follow us out here? Just to kill some time, Mihawk said, looking bored. That's bullshit. The Krieg pirates roared, firing the said man with their guns, only for their bullets to be deflected or sliced by the said swordsman. What? I missed? A Krieg pirate asked in shock. He deflected it. It'll be the same no matter how many times you shoot. Zoro answered the pirates and took a step forward, ignoring the gasps of everyone. He changes the bullet's trajectory with the tip of his sword. I've never seen such graceful movements, Zoro stated, walking towards the swordsman, ignoring the other pirates who were cursing him. A sword without grace is no strong sword, Mihawk replied, sheathing his sword back at its rightful place and eyeing Zoro curiously. Did you cut this ship with that sword? Zoro asked, standing before Mihawk on the broken deck of the Krieg ship. Yes, indeed, Mihawk replied nonchalantly. No wonder, Zoro said, looking at the man with a nervous smirk. You really are one of the strongest. That got a reaction from Mihawk, who raised his eyebrow at the said statement. There were few who knew about the said thing, especially he didn't think that someone from the weakest sea would know that. I set sail to meet you, Zoro continued, making his resolve. He felt wide eyes looking at him, most pirates recognizing him. He could feel his friend's eyes on his back. What do you aim for? Mihawk asked, sitting cross-legged in his boat. To be the strongest, Zoro stated, tying his bandana. So let's have a duel. Luffy, Nami said instantly, you gotta stop him. Luffy didn't reply, he only stared at Mihawk intensely. It's him, Zoro, Roranoa Zoro of the Three Sword Style. Some of the Krieg pirates yelled in the background, recognizing Zoro. The pirate hunter? Don Krieg asked, looking at the green-haired man with interest. If he survives, he may bring that fool and his crew, Krieg thought. Pitiful, weakling, Mihawk said the words, standing up from his little boat and walking to the broken wreck of the ship, which was still floating and where Zoro stood. If you're a competent swordsman by any means, then I can demonstrate the clear difference in strength between you and me, without needing to cross blades at all. But still you dare to challenge me. Does the bravery come from your conviction? Mihawk asked Zoro with his hands crossed on his chest, or from ignorance? It comes from my ambition and a promise to a friend, Zoro said, holding his white sword in his mouth and the other two in each of his hands. To be honest, I never thought I'd be able to meet you so early on. A waste, if you ask me, Mihawk replied nonchalantly. The world's one of the strongest swordsmen versus the pirate hunter Zoro, Zeph announced, standing on the railing of his ship and looking at the two men and then to one of the man's captain and crewmates. The orange-haired girl was clearly looking with scared eyes at the two men, while the others looked as if they thought that the pirate hunter would win. But Zeph knew that the young captain knew that his swordsman wouldn't. The way he was glaring at Mihawk was enough to prove it, if not the way the railing of his deck was forming cracks under the teen's hands. Luffy need not be told that Zoro wasn't prepared for this fight. At least not right now. The difference between him and Hawkeye was a lot, if not less. He watched as Mihawk pulled out his necklace from his neck and took out the little knife from it. He wanted to fight the man himself, but he knew this was the fight that Zoro had to fight if he wants to achieve his dream. He can't stand in the way of someone's dream ever, even if. Just what are you planning to do with that? Zoro asked, looking at the little knife which Hawkeye was holding. I don't kill a rabbit with a cannon, Mihawk answered simply, as if he was not insulting and agitating Zoro. Unfortunately, I do not have a blade smaller than this at the moment. There's a limit, Zoro said through his swords in anger, to just how much you can underestimate me. You better not regret it when you die. Zoro yelled the last part and rushed towards Mihawk, who wasn't moving at all. Hear me, little frog in this small well, Mihawk said, not even preparing himself for the swordsman who was dashing towards him. It's time for you to realize that the world is bigger than what it seems from your well. Onigiri, Zoro roared, attacking Mihawk, but got stopped by the tiny little blade. Zoro? Usopp said in shock. Brothers, Onigiri was stopped, Johnny yelled in shock. His signature attack that sends his opponents flying 100% was stopped, Yosaku added to Johnny's shout. I told you so, Nami yelled once more, looking at Luffy. Zoro was one of her friends. She wouldn't want him to die. He won't be able to win this fight. Call him back. Luffy, you are the captain. I can't, Luffy said through his gritted teeth. He has been seeing the whole fight using his observation haki. He knew how the match will end, he knew it damn well. And yet, he refused to move a single step to rescue Zoro. Mihawk is not someone he can underestimate so easily, that's what he knows. Zoro wasn't able to move a single step. There had been no men who had been able to see through this move, and yet he had been stopped by a stupid toy. Zoro moved his swords in blind rage, not wanting to accept that he was so far behind one of the best. Each time, his sword ended up getting stopped by Mihawk, until he fell on his back. He stood up, not wanting to give up at all. Arg! He let out a battle cry as he dashed forward to the man, who was only getting more bored. Come on, bro. Show him what you've really got, Johnny cheered for Zoro, along with Usopp and Yosaku. All the while Nami kept on seeing the death match with horrified eyes and trembling lips. The moments she spent with Zoro were flashing in her mind, making her think if this is how she would end up losing her friends, which she made after several years. I trained to win. Zoro's mind was reminiscing the words from Kuina. Her want to be the greatest too, but her words of how women can't. I came to beat you. His words to Koshiro-sensei when Kuina died. The want to become stronger for her and his sake. His oath to become the world's strongest swordsman whose name would be famous enough to reach even the heavens. What burdens do you carry? What do you still desire at the extent of your strength, weakling? Mihawk asked nonchalantly. How dare you call our bro a weakling? Yosaku yelled, followed by Johnny, who yelled at the same time. We ought to teach you a lesson, you bastard. Luffy held them and threw them on the deck of the Barati back before they could interfere in Zoro's fight. Stay put. He held them down with both of his hands, in the process holding himself from not trashing out and going after Mihawk. Luffy. Nami said almost in a whisper as she felt the swirls of emotions flaring within the teen. She could see how he was restraining himself from interfering in the fight. Zoro was tossed to the ground once again by Mihawk, but he was not the one to stay put. He stood up and positioned his sword again. Tora. Luffy's words were ringing in his ears of how embarrassing it would be if wouldn't be able to become the greatest swordsman in the Pirate King's crew. All because he had faith that Luffy would be the king one day. Gari. He was stopped once again, but this time he wasn't thrown. He wasn't stopped by the swords clanging to each other. He was stopped by the little blade pie above his heart. A little more and he will be dead. But death didn't scare him much than the thought of losing what he practically lives for. Bro. Zoro. Cackle. A thunder cackled loudly in the sky, which was darkening at an alarming rate in the once tranquil blue sky, painting it as if it were night. As if it was protesting the death match that was going on. It looked as if the heavens itself didn't want the match, but at the same time it didn't want to interrupt it, as none of the lightnings decided to fall too close to the broken wreck. But all of this was merely ignored by the two swordsmen. Zoro didn't step back, even if his own blood was soaking his own t-shirt. Even if blood was trickling down from his mouth. Do you wish for me to pierce your heart? Mihawk asked, as Zoro didn't take a single step back, with a raised eyebrow. Why do you refuse to step back? Not really sure myself. Zoro replied honestly, leading to more blood trickle down his mouth. But I get the feeling that if I were to take even one step back right now, I'd lose something important to me. A promise or oath. Or whatever, it would be irreversibly broken, and that I'd never be able to return back to where I'm standing right now. Yes, Mihawk agreed. Such is defeat. Ha ha ha. Then that's why I can't step back, Zoro stated with a little laugh. Even if it means your death? Mihawk asked, looking at Zoro's eyes and searching for any fear. Searching for any lies behind the words he had uttered. I'd rather die, Zoro said without missing a beat. Mihawk was intrigued now. The conviction which the boy possessed before him to rather choose death than defeat was something rare. Even New World pirates feared death, except one reckless idiot who he has met. Kid, Mihawk said, taking out the knife from the boy's chest. Tell me your name. Rorinoa Zoro, Zoro said, positioning his sword for the final strike. I shall remember it, Mihawk stated, reaching for his black blade. Yuru. For your strength is not often seen in this world. The thunder roared above them, and the sky was changing to an unusual color which made Mihawk glance at the sky once, but his attention snapped when someone's haki flared. And it was not some ordinary haki. It was a controlled burst of Conqueror's haki aimed at him. He looked to the side to look at a kid with a straw hat, recognizing him in an instant. The kid was commanding him to not kill the boy before him. The straw hat made him pinpoint who exactly the boy was. The boy, the 17-year-old teen, who really looked like a kid, was none other than the boy Shanks always tells him about. The boy was none other than Monkey D. Luffy, a New World veteran. He saw the boy struggling to jump into the match and trying to keep himself from interfering. He can tell that the haki which he felt was due to the anger and concern for his friend, and not because the boy wanted to weaken him before the last strike, if he could, that is. Shanks did tell him that this monkey D. Luffy was powerful, but the fact he looked so young, and his brilliant control over Conqueror's haki was left unsaid. And that was not where the list ended. The boy clearly had a mysterious aura. The aura of someone too powerful, and not to be messed with. In his eyes, Monkey D. Luffy was clearly an enigma. Luffy watched as Mihawk's gaze fell on him momentarily. He glared at the said man, not wanting him to kill his friend. He respects Zoro's decision, but he can't help the anger which was bubbling up. He couldn't stop the thunders from not clashing with each other and making a violent sound, which was making many Krieg pirates flinch. He watched as Mihawk took out his black blade, removing his gaze from him, clearly stating that he won't listen to him and do whatever the hell he wants. To pay my respect to you as a fellow swordsman, I shall end this duel with my black sword, Mihawk said, making many pirates gawk at the beautiful sword. Die, Mihawk said, running forward to Zoro, who started twisting his blades before him. Bro, that's enough. Stop, Johnny and Yosaku yelled, getting the situation after all. Zoro. Stop it, you'll die, Nami screamed, her tears leaking through her eyes as she watched death getting closer and closer to Zoro. 3 swords style secret. 3,000 worlds. Zoro yelled as he and Mihawk crossed each other's paths. Not even a second later, Zoro's swords broke, except Kuina's blade, making Zoro finally conclude that he was no match for Hawkeye. At least not now. He sheathed his white sword and turned towards Mihawk, who looked confused. Scars on a back are a swordsman's shame, Zoro said with a smirk, blood dripping from his mouth to the deck. The lightning cackled loudly in the sky, illuminating Zoro's bloody figure standing with his arms spread, inviting the other swordsmen to end him. Splendid, Mihawk said, and without missing a beat slashed Zoro. Zoro! Luffy shouted with the thunder and the clouds which roared in the sky, making everyone's eardrums pain. The flashes of lightning danced in the inky blackness of the sky as if they were hurt, wounded or sad. Each strike was sending shockwaves to the people who were watching it with eyes filled with horror. Nami had already collapsed on her feet, with her shaky hands on her mouth to cover her sobs. She couldn't care about the again unexpected thunder which had marked its arrival. She couldn't muster her hands to leave her mouth to go and cover her eardrums. What the heck was she thinking when she thought of leaving the reckless fools, these reckless dreamy idiots, who had warmed their place in her heart? But if she stays, she will bring them only trouble. But she can't leave them right now. What friend would she be if she leaves the crew right now? Bro, Yosaku and Johnny yelled, diving into the water to fish out Zoro, who was already falling. Zoro. Usopp whispered, finally deciding to move and bring up a little boat to the men. Why? Sanji muttered under his breath, not understanding a thing. Why did ambition stood before death? Why one must not throw away their ambitions if it meant they would live? Why? Sanji couldn't understand it at all. Damn it! Luffy roared, rocketing himself to Mihawk and where Zoro had fallen to. What's that? The pirates shrieked in terror as they saw Luffy's arms stretch. But that was the least they were scared of now. Mihawk was here, and above it was the ear-numbing thunder which looked as if it had emanated from hell itself. The air was filled with tension. Tension for what would happen next for the Krieg pirates, and the fear of the storm which was beginning to remind them of the Grand Line. Tension about what would happen to Zoro, whose body was falling deeper and deeper into the dark abyss of the ocean, which seemed as if she wanted to claim him as her own. A chilling anger was in the atmosphere as Luffy landed just a few feet away from Mihawk. Anger would be a less word. He was pissed. Pissed to even check on Zoro's flickering haki, which was worrying. He was so pissed that he couldn't even hear Nami shouting to not go before the man. He was pissed to not notice the flares of Conqueror's haki surrounding him and providing some fearful pirates the abyss of escape from the horrifying sights. If Mihawk was not intrigued enough by Shanks' story on the little menace of Monkey D. Luffy, then the situation right now sure piqued his curiosity. The kid did show a childish anger on his face, but deep down it was sending shivers in his spine. He wasn't sure if it was the work of his Conqueror's haki or not, but he knew that the kid was blinded by rage right now. He wouldn't listen until his friend was alright. And what was up with the thunders? They cackled at each step of the boys as if they were just a part of him, which showed their anger with him. Mihawk couldn't understand. He had been in the New World, in the Grand Line, and yet had seen nothing like the boy. And was he sweating? But why? The air was chill, and yet he could feel the scorching heat of the sun just on him. He acted nonchalant. From out of him wanted to unveil the mystery of the boy which stood before him, and a part of him felt that the boy could see through his facade. You won't be able to remove your sight from him, Shanks had said once, laughing as if he was stating a fact, not a perception. This was the time Mihawk did agree with the drunken ass of the other man. His thoughts were halted as the boy lifted his head, his eyes similar to the eyes of a predator. His blank face, which was lit with the lightning that danced on the sky, looked as if it was straight from hell. This was the time that Mihawk felt that he had made a mistake, as he clearly saw the boy's irises change to reddish ones, which looked as if they were out for blood, for his blood. The boy sure has a devil fruit, but what? The boy can stretch. He can change his irises. What kind of devil fruit works like this even? Even Shanks always avoided breaching on this topic, and as a government-sanctioned pirate, he could tell that it was for the safety of the boy. The flickering eyes told him how he was trying to control himself, and Mihawk found the opportunity to calm the boy. "Fear not. The man's still alive," he stated, wanting to remove his gaze from the raven-haired boy and look at the green-haired who was being pulled from the depths of the ocean by his friends. "I know," the boy stated, his eyes piercing his eyes as if looking for something. After a few seconds, the boy removed his eyes from him to look at his comrade, as if he had found the thing which he had been looking in his eyes. "Bro, answer us. Bro," Yosaku's desperate voice reached Luffy as he looked at the duo bringing Zoro to their little boat. "Zoro," Luffy whispered, wanting nothing more than to check up on his friend. The man was coughing blood, but Luffy knew that Zoro would live. It pains him to agree with his mother that this event couldn't have been ignored and that this was important for Zoro to strengthen his want to be the greatest swordsman of the world. "I'm Dracula Mihawk," Hawkeye announced, looking at the boat where some people were giving first aid to the wounded man. "It is too much early for you to die. Know yourself. Know your world," Mihawk continued, knowing that man was hearing him even if he was just clinging to consciousness by a mere thread. "And become strong, Roronoa," Mihawk's voice bellowed. "No matter how many months or years pass by, I shall stand here at the top of the world and wait for you. So forge on ahead with that fierce conviction and try to surpass my sword." "Surpass me, Roronoa," Mihawk shouted, wanting the boy to hear it clearly. To think that Mihawk would say such a thing, Zeph said with his arms crossed on his chest, and with a clear respect for the green-haired boy. He whispered something to a cook, who nodded and rushed inside the restaurant. "Boy, what do you aim for?" Mihawk asked, looking at Luffy, who looked back at him. "The Pirate King, the freest man in the world. A tough path, indeed. Even tougher than surpassing myself," Mihawk said with a smirk. But he felt that if someone could do it, then this boy would definitely. "Whatever," Luffy said, blowing a raspberry at the man. "I'm going to do it anyway." With that said, Luffy turned his attention to his comrades. "Usopp, Nami, is Zoro alright?" "Like hell, he'll be," Usopp said, applying pressure to Zoro's wound to stop the blood flow. Zoro was getting paler and paler by each passing minute. "He has lost a lot of blood," Nami added, trying to help Zoro, while Johnny and Yosaku kept on crying. "We need to get him to a dock." Shocking them all, Zoro's white blade rose into the air. Luffy," Zoro began. Nami, who had been talking, stopped. No one dared to interrupt the swordsman as he continued, with one hand lifting his sword and the other covering his eyes, which were flowing with tears. "Circa, can you hear me?" "Yeah," Luffy said, paying extra attention to his first mate. "Sorry for worrying you," Zoro continued, his voice wavering a little. "I know that if I don't become the world's strongest swordsman, it will only embarrass you." Zoro spat out blood, making Yosaku and Johnny panic. Usopp and Nami didn't dare to interrupt Zoro as they knew what was happening. "I swear that I'm never going to lose again," Zoro yelled through his blood, snot and tears. "Until the day I fight him and win." Mihawk smirked, and Luffy's face had a wide D grin on his face, knowing Zoro would grow stronger and stronger. "I swear to never lose again," Zoro shouted, despite it was aggravating his wounds further. "Any problems, Pirate King?" She. "Nope," Luffy laughed brightly, making Zoro feel at ease and drop his sword. "You make a good team," Mihawk said, walking away. "I'd like to see you two again, sometime in the future." "Sure, Haki," Luffy said, giving the man his sunny grin, and making Mihawk smirk, not caring about the nickname. "Tell Shanks hi for me," Luffy said, looking at the man who turned his neck slightly to look at him over his shoulder. But why did Haki look blurry? Luffy blinked his eyes, trying to look at the man until he could see the man's slight twitching of lips. Hawkeye had to literally control the slight upward twitch that his lips wanted him to make. But he could really see the picture which Shanks had painted in his mind, coming alive. But still, he won't say that the kid's smile made him want to protect him. But maybe he will look out for the teen as well as his new interest. "Hey, Brad, bring that boy here," Zeph shouted from where he stood. "Sure, old man," Luffy replied back and jumped to the little dinghy where his friends were. He was feeling hungry, but that can be done after Zoro gets treatment. "You'll be all better, Zoro," Luffy said, cheering up the little crew and their friends which he had gathered. No one said anything as Johnny and Yosaku rowed the little boat to the Barati to get Zoro treatment. They knew one thing, that if anyone can help, then it is Zeph and the cooks in the Barati. They have to keep medicines, or at least a first aid kit to treat Zoro until they get to an actual doctor. "Hawkeyes," Don Krieg's voice came, as he plopped on the broken wreck of his ship. "Did you come for the head of the infamous ruler of East Blue, Don Krieg?" "For a while, yes," Mihawk stated honestly, his eyes flickering from the pirate and then settling on the little group that was pulling Roronoa to the fish restaurant. "But I've already enjoyed myself here, so I'll return to my nap." "No need to be so hasty," Don Krieg said, not giving a fuck about the warlord, who had destroyed his ship with a single swing of his blade. "You may have your fun, but I haven't." Don, WYZ purposely trying to prevent that man from leaving. The Krieg pirates stated with tears in their eyes. They didn't want to face the man at all, and here Don was agitating the man. "How about you die before leaving?" Don Krieg roared as he pointed his gun, each on his hand and shoulder, to the swordsman and started shooting. "You never learn, do you?" Mihawk asked, taking about his sword and swirling it gracefully, making the water carry him and his boat away from the ruffians. "Farewell." Luffy plopped himself beside Zeph, carrying a wounded Zoro in his arms. The sight was sure a bit comical of a kid like Luffy holding Zoro. "Lay him there," Zeph said as he guided Luffy to one of the tables in the Barati. Luffy listened to him, knowing that he would be able to save Zoro. Nami, Usopp, Johnny and Yosaku followed the duo with Sanji, who was looking conflicted in his own thoughts regarding Zoro's ambitions and his recklessness. Moreover, what was up with the kid, who without a thought jumped before one of the best to avenge his crew? "Give the old man a hand, will ya?" Zeph asked, looking at Usopp, who nodded quickly. Zeph didn't ask Luffy to do it because he had a feeling the boy would mess up, even if he didn't want to. And Sanji? He was gathering his thoughts, so Zeph let him do that. "Alcohol," Zeph said as he tore Zoro's shirt with a knife. "Carry kitchen to bring one." "He'll be okay, right?" Nami asked in a low voice, taking the bloody clothes that Zeph was tearing carefully from Zoro's chest. "I won't lie. The lad lost a lot of blood," Zeph said, taking the bottle of alcohol from the hands of the long-nosed teen. "Needle, Sanji?" Zeph asked, making Sanji move fast. He started sterilizing the wound. He was not sure why he was doing this, but he knew that he shouldn't let the green-haired teen die. After all, he was recognized by Mihawk. Moreover, the pirates outside would be tackled soon, and he had time till they planned their next move, which was barely 5 minutes. "Here," Sanji passed him the needle. "Cut a fish," Zeph stated, making Sanji follow it without a question. "Why fish?" Usopp asked curiously, looking at Zeph's hands as they pierced Zoro's chest, in the process closing and stitching the wound. "Fish skin is good for stomach wounds, an old seaman technique," Zeph said, not looking at the others. He could feel the eyes of the mysterious kid on him, watching his each step carefully. He ignored it and started layering the fish skin on the green-haired man's chest. "Mihawk sure has spared the life of the boy by an inch." "Bandages," Zeph announced, making Johnny and Yosaku, who had disappeared when Usopp went to get alcohol, come back with bandages. Luffy watched everything as Zeph bandaged Zoro. He could feel Zoro's aura stabilizing from before, meaning that he indeed was out of the danger zone. He felt a smile grow up on his face as he saw Zoro breathing softly, as if he was never hurt. "When will he be up?" Luffy asked, not averting his eyes from Zoro. The world seemed to spin around him, yet Luffy held his ground. "I don't know, but let's hope it's soon," Zeph replied honestly. "It's Zoro we're taking about," Usopp said in a low voice. "That dumbass is gonna be fine," Nami said half-heartedly. She didn't want Luffy to look sad, and Zoro wouldn't like it either. Nami saw Luffy give her a small smile, but the thing which was worrying Nami was that Luffy was paling. The slight concern in the eyes of Usopp showed that he had seen it too. "We need to get him some sake and he'll be up as new," Luffy said, making Zeph instantly reply, "That is not how these work." "We won't know until we tr." Luffy stumbled and fell forward directly on Usopp, who was standing ahead of him. "Luffy!" Nami and Usopp yelled at once, seeing Luffy's condition. "You okay, brat?" Zeph asked with a raised eyebrow. The brat was not looking any well. "I'm fine, old man," Luffy said, snapping himself out of the dizziness he was feeling. He shouldn't have used the lightnings. But for fuck's sake, he can't control it any well yet. He gritted his teeth and stood on his legs. "Owner Zeph." A cook came rushing in. "They're starting." "So, they are finally ready," Sanji said, pushing his hands in his pockets. "Stay here and rest," Sanji said, particularly to Luffy, who looked ready to fight. "No way," Luffy said, cracking his muscles. "I'm all in for it." "But Luffy," Nami and Usopp got cut off when Luffy interrupted them. "Nami, Usopp," Luffy said, walking towards Sanji. "Take care of Zoro for me." He gave them a small smile, leaving no arguments from both of them. He knew Nami wouldn't be leaving anytime soon. But he needs to finish this fight even if it's not his. Zoro needs rest, which he can either get here or on his ship when it sets sail, which will only happen when Sanji joins them. And Mary needs to be protected. He can't let the pirates have their home. Luffy turned towards the old man and said, "Hey old man, if I chase them away, can I have Sanji as my cook?" "I am not a bargaining chip, you damn brat," Sanji yelled at the kid, who just gave him a sheepish smile. He didn't look pale or weak at all as he had felt just a moment ago. "Do whatever you want," Zeph grumbled, but Luffy could tell that the man was happy with that. On the other side, Don Krieg had finished luring his crew to attack the Barati and claim it as their own. Even if some of his crew tried to state that the Grand Line could be filled with monsters like Hawkeye Guy, he kept denying it. Lastly stated that Mihawk clearly had a devil fruit like the straw hat wearing kid, who was coming out of the Barati and bickering with Zeph and a blonde. He was sure that Zeph's logbooks contained a way to fight against those freaks in the Grand Line and even some information about the One Piece, which was enough to energize his crew and follow his command without a question. "Charge forward, men!" Don Krieg roared, stopping the bickering between the three Sanji, Zeph, and Luffy and making them pay attention to him. "Let's take over that restaurant." They're all fired up to fight. Luffy stated with a wide grin and cracked his knuckles. "Where's Patty and Carne?" Sanji asked, ignoring the sadness that he was feeling deep within his heart. He just can't believe he was used as a bargaining material. But he owes his life to Zeph. "They're busy with battle preparations." A cook stated with a feral grin. "Those guys sure are reliable in times like these." "Only in times like this," Sanji repeated. "You better go to the control room and open up the fins." "What?" the cook asked with wide eyes. "That'll give our enemies a better foothold." "The geezer won't shut up if we destroy his restaurant," Sanji said, poking his tongue out at the man. "You said something, brat?" Zeph asked, looking at Sanji's antics. "Yeah, I said you won't stop sprouting nonsense," Sanji retorted, angry about the conversation they had earlier. He doesn't want to leave him, the one whom he still needs to pay his debt. "Hand that ship to us, you pathetic cooks," the pirates yelled, making their way to the Barati. "Let's make this at least fun," Luffy said, holding the railing and running back to stretch his arms and give him enough space. "Gomu Gomu no rocket." He flung himself to the Krieg pirates, making them panic. But Luffy didn't give them enough time as his arms stretched again in a practiced motion, flinging the pirates back to the deck or the ocean with his next attack. Gomu Gomu no scythe. "That kid ain't bad." The cooks cheered, looking at the number of men who had just fallen straight to the ocean or just had blacked out. "That's the power of a Grand Line pirate?" Sanji asked in shock. He hadn't believed the kid much when he had stated that he was from Grand Line, but he couldn't ignore the fact anymore. On top of it, the kid clearly looked unwell. "I'll send ungrateful crooks like you flying," Luffy hissed, baring his teeth at Krieg while punching away a pirate who had raised his sword at him. Honestly, he looked like a kitten wanting to bite someone. Krieg laughed as he saw the team fight his men, and how good his crew was acting on feinting on the kid. His crew, obviously, can't be weak enough to go down with a punch from the kid. So, he was quick to realize that his men were following in his footsteps to show the team the power of the Krieg pirates. "What's a little brat gonna do against me in a place where you can fall anytime in the ocean?" Krieg asked with a smug grin on his face. Moreover, he can see the team stumbling on his legs a few times. That sure was an advantage for him to grab. "I'm not a brat. I'm a pirate, and the ocean is my." The brat gave him a smile that became too feral and disturbing for Krieg's liking. Home. For the first time in his life, Krieg felt that he should not fight with someone, moreover that someone was a mere kid, who looked pale. A simple brat with dreams far bigger than his very own size. The feeling that he got as the kid came near him told him to run, but Krieg, being the stubborn and arrogant one, denied it. He is not running from a mere kid. He won't ever run away. He is the strongest in the East Blue and soon will be the strongest in the whole world. The greatest pirate who will ever live. He can't be scared of a kid. So, he prepared himself to beat the kid into a bloody pulp. To make an example out of him of what happens when someone challenges the great Don Krieg, the pirate fleet admiral of. He couldn't even finish his thought before a punch came straight at him, shattering his trusty armor which he had thought would never break. He was in shock for a second, unable to comprehend or prepare for an attack as a sharp, stinging pain made him throw up his blood and collapse on his knees. It hurt. It hurts so much. Why does it hurt? His armor should have been able to survive the punch. It was just a measly punch by a child who looked on the edge of fainting. It wasn't long before he was kissing the ground with a sharp howling pain coursing through his body. He could feel the pain, so terrible. He has never experienced anything like it before, and the fact that it was from a kid was more unbelievable. But no one had paid attention to the fight, which was lucky for Don Krieg. His reputation won't be crumbling to dust for a moment. All he needed to do was get up and show the kid that he was not going down with a punch. He has just underestimated him. But the blackness in his vision refused to let him stand. So, after a little struggle, he lost to the darkness which engulfed him whole. A few seconds earlier, just before Luffy was about to leap to Krieg. "Get the hell out of our way if you don't want to die," Patty's loud voice came, making the pirates ready for what was about to come. "Barati's naval weapon, Sabagashira No. 1 is ready," Carne yelled the next. That caught the attention of all the pirates except for two who were bickering and preparing to fight. Patty and Carne were riding on a fish boat which had multiple cannons located in its mouth and had come out of the Barati. The two cooks were having some difficulty paddling it and turning in different directions, but were able to control it soon enough and hence had the pirates who were swimming to run for their lives. The fish cannon boat was firing on the little wrecked parts of the remains of the Krieg ship, destroying the foothold of the pirates. "Open the fins," a cook shouted, catching the attention of almost every pirate except two who had pounced on each other. The water level in the ocean suddenly rose, making a gurgling sound and drowning the sound of the armor breaking into pieces, and soon a platform followed. The cooks didn't want to fight inside their home, let's have it destroyed as collateral. The cooks of Barati marched on the new platform holding their weapons and looking ready to fight, to protect their homes. Just what the hell can a couple of measly cooks do against us pirates? The Krieg pirates yelled, gaining their footing on the platform. Don't you dare look down on us, cooks. Come on, show him the power of the fighting cooks, Patty yelled, encouraging the cooks as he continued to paddle their little boat. But where the hell is he? Carne whispered, yelled, making the Krieg pirates turn their attention to the two cooks, who looked ready to crush them. I bet he is hiding in his hide 'cause of us, Patty said proudly. Hey, Krieg! You bastard, where the heck are you? You chickening out or what? That made the fight in the Barati, where the cooks were fighting against the Krieg pirate fighters, come to a halt. No one had noticed when Krieg had disappeared, but the cooks couldn't care less about it when they already had problems on their plate. The pirates were their main problem. What's with Don? A Krieg pirate asked another, looking nearby for their captain only to see him nowhere. I have never seen him vanish mid-battle. Shush. Another pirate shushed the other man who was blabbering. Don Krieg is the strongest pirate. He sure is testing us. We should not disappoint him. Or rather, he is on his foul play again and wants to catch someone off guard. Another pirate pointed out, making the other two nod. We should make sure that his plan works and not gather too much attention on him. Patty, he is not anywhere. Carne Yell is good at hiding. How dare you call our captain a coward? Some of the Krieg pirates started getting agitated and a group of 5 pirates together stopped the little fishboat Patty and Carne were riding on. Crap! They stopped it. Patty yelled in shock and started pressing buttons which would lead to the firing of the cannons, but it didn't happen in time. Don ain't got time to play with the likes of you, a pirate yelled as the strength of the 5 pirates sent them flying off to the Barati. All talk and no backbone, Sanji said with a sigh, taking out his cigarette from his mouth. Useless bastards. Crap, we're gonna crash into the restaurant, Carne yelled, holding onto his seat as if his life depended on it. Sanji jumped from his place and kicked the fish cannon boat flying straight away from the geezer's treasure, sending it straight to the platform. Luffy, who was leaning on a broken mast and looking at Krieg, feeling the pain of the man, turned away from him and looked at Sanji when he felt that something interesting would be happening. His instincts were correct when he saw Sanji jumping higher than a normal person could and kicking away the fish cannon boat, which made Luffy jump up in excitement at the cool ship, straight to the platform that had appeared out of nowhere for Luffy. Luffy whistled, clearly impressed at the display of strength his cook showed, while the cooks in Barati were clearly in shock. He kicked it, some of the pirates asked in shock, but Patty and Carne were angry, at least by face. They accused Sanji of trying to kill his side, and the audacity of Sanji not even denying it made them angrier and sprout profanities which marked them as pirate cooks. Patty and Carne weren't even able to finish with Sanji, as thumping sounds came. They turned back to witness Krieg pirates having already finished their fights with their cooks. Powerful. A voice came taunting Patty and Carne, who were just telling Sanji of how powerful they are. Even if you hold weapons, a cook is still a cook. So why don't you scram back to other kitchens on land? Don't compare us to other pirates you've crossed before, another Krieg pirate stated. In front of them were the cooks lying on the ground, all wounded. We're pirates of Don Krieg, the ruler of the East Blue. Shit, these guys are strong, one of the cooks said, trying to get up. Are you gonna let them beat you that easily? Patty asked angrily. And you call yourselves fighting cooks? Carne joined the fray. So what if you're fighting cooks? We fight for a living, the pirates said, charging towards Patty and Carne, who beat them to the ground. Some of the pirates who were back started sweating and stepping back from the duo. But Patty and Carne were unfortunately not able to take on the show as a weird guy knocked them out on the deck. Haha, behold. The man, known as Pearl, who was ridiculously armed with an iron shield, laughed. My invincible iron wall. Pearl. The pirates yelled in excitement. Ha 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 ha. You won't be standing after my lethal punch, Pearl said, holding the iron shields in his hands. You just got a good taste of my special Pearl present. Hey look. This guy's got a damn fine set of knives on him. Heh. This knife should cut better than mine, a Krieg pirate said, crouching down to Patty and trying to get the knife, but the man didn't let it go, even if it was making him bleed. Let go, the pirate yelled. He was about to speak more but was unable to when a kick landed square on his face, throwing him afar from the cook to his fellow members and then straight to Pearl's iron shield. Sanji took a swig from his cigarette and launched himself to the man who clearly wanted a fight. Then the next on his list was the weird Pearl guy. He better leave the Barati or he would kill him. On the other side, Luffy found some pirates lingering in the Mary. Don't you dare step on our home, Luffy shouted as he flung himself to the Mary, taking out the pirates to the ocean. They were not worth his time. He wanted to see the fight between Sanji and the guy with Pearl on his forehead, who was panicking due to his face getting bloodied by Sanji. His cook sure was strong. Due to Luffy's anger, he wasn't able to witness the change in the situation. Jin holding Zeph as a hostage to stop Sanji. But as soon as he came out of the ocean, wet, he noticed it. It was cheating. He was angry that Jin was acting like this to stop Sanji. Luffy landed on the platform and walked through the fire as if it was nothing. Why do you lie, Jin? Luffy asked when Jin threatened to blow off Zeph. Wait, Sanji held him back, holding his arm. Let's see what he has to say. You want to save this man, don't you, Sanji? Jin asked, holding his pistol just on Zeph's head, and his other hand holding the broken peg leg of Zeph. Then leave the ship. Leave this ship? Sanji asked, chewing the end of his cigarette, as if. That caused the cooks of the Barati to panic. They didn't want Zeph to die cause of Sanji provoking Jin. But the most shocking was when Sanji asked Jin to shoot him instead of Zeph. Are you stupid? Luffy asked, grabbing Sanji's collar, feeling that Sanji was not kidding about dying in place of Zeph. Don't you dare die, Luffy yelled. Whatever, Sanji said, not removing his eyes from where Zeph, his father figure, was held captive. In their argument they missed Pearl getting up and aiming straight for them. Luffy, look out! A shout came, making Luffy instantly duck, pulling Sanji with him, to avoid Pearl's attack. That sure would have let his secrets be spilled, now that his blood is turning more golden. But he doesn't have time to dwell on those thoughts. Thanks, Nami, Luffy shouted back. Don't ya dare move, if you want the geezer to live, Pearl shouted, banging his iron shield, wanting to smack Sanji, but Luffy wouldn't let it happen. Luffy raised his fist to knock the guy, only to be stopped by Sanji again. Don't lay a finger on him, kid, Sanji said, standing still with a scowl on his face, waiting for his head to be banged by Pearl. He didn't care as long as the geezer and his treasure was saved. But why? Luffy asked angrily. He respected his crewmate's decision, but this was stupid. As stupid as Nami hesitated to ask his help to free your village. Cause the damn geezer is held at gunpoint by him, Sanji said, gritting his teeth. That Pearl guy was just inches into banging him, and yet he was not scared. Are you stupid? Luffy asked, punching the Pearl guy away, making Sanji widen his eyes in horror and look at Jin, who looked as shocked as him. Why? Do you want the geezer to die? Sanji asked, grabbing Luffy's collar, his face scrunched in anger. You are damn stupid, Luffy said, jerking the hands of Sanji from his collar. Do you think Jin will be doing it in reality? Luffy asked, shocking Jin, who was unable to do anything. Do you think the old man wants you to die? Luffy shouted once more. You don't even know what the significance of kindness I received. What do you know about this restaurant? Sanji yelled back. So, you are gonna die for a restaurant? Are you dumb? What was that? Dying isn't something you should do to repay kindness. That's not the old man saved you for on that lonely cliff. That hit Sanji. He had never told anyone how bad their starvation period was on that lonely and hopeless cliff. Old man didn't save you that night in the storm for you to die. He didn't give up his leg for you to walk towards your death. How do you know? Sanji asked, his face shadowed by his bangs. There were gasps from the cooks as they realized that everything that was being said was the truth. Mom told me how stubborn you are, how you can't see the reality behind the old man's words, how you won't leave the old man to pursue his in your dream, Luffy shouted, not realizing what he was doing. I don't know who your mom is, but I do know that I can't leave the old man. He has done and given up on lots of things for me. His strength. His dreams. Sanji said, chewing his cigarette angrily. Angry at himself. That is why I don't want him to lose anything else. Damn, pipsqueak. Zeph gritted his teeth. He was embarrassed for a moment when he realized that his facade was see-through by the little brat and whoever his mom was. But he had known from the moment he had set his eyes on the brat, that he was special. Special like some in the grand line who were born with gifts from God itself. It's not time to ramble about the past, Zeph finished. Shut up, Sanji yelled, and I told you to not treat me as a damn kid anymore. Please, Sanji. Jin said, shadowing his eyes, and his hands trembling. I don't to kill you. Please leave the ship. I don't want to kill my savior. I don't want Don to kill you. Your captain is down, Jin. You better leave your nonsensical act. Luffy stated, glaring at the guy, who was trying to muster up his courage to pull the trigger. As if a bomb had been dropped, everyone turned towards Luffy and in unison shouted, what? Krieg lost. Jin asked, his eyes shadowed by his bandana. As if that could ever happen. He's the supreme ruler of the seas. Nah, he is just a weakling, relying on external strength, Luffy replied, with his hands on the back of his head. How dare you brat sprout such nonsense? The Krieg pirates yelled at Luffy. Ardon is invincible. The strongest one in the East Blue, another Krieg pirate yelled. While some of the Krieg pirates were shouting profanities, some began searching for their Don. It didn't even take a minute for them to find the bloodied body of Krieg on a floating wreck. Don, a Krieg pirate yelled, eliciting a stir from said man. What? Jin asked, listening to the horrified screams of his fellow mates, who were slowly surrounding a body. When the hell did his armor shatter? How did he get this horrifying wound? It doesn't look good at all. Jin's hands dropped the gun by themselves, once he saw Don Krieg standing up, looking unconscious and howling. The cobweb wound in his chest looked horrifyingly life-threatening. What the heck? Jin shouted, rushing to his Don. Who did this? Oops. Luffy said nonchalantly, admiring the work he had done on the pirate captain. I overdid it? The cook's sweat dropped at the words of the teen, while Sanji rushed to Zeph's side to get him up. Nami, who was watching everything, felt a lick of hope in her heart. She had seen Luffy fighting, his selfless actions, and his care for people who were not even in his crew yet. He was different. Different from the other pirates she had ever encountered. Maybe, just maybe, he can defeat him. I'm the strongest, the defeated Don Krieg yelled loudly, snapping everyone's attention to the man who was bleeding heavily and was standing only due to his madness. No one dares to go against me. Don Krieg's eyes settled on the brat who had defeated him with a single punch. Who the hell do you think yourself as? Don Krieg snatched the guns from his crew and started shooting at Luffy, who was dancing through every one of them, surprising everyone in the vicinity. You will die, Sanji yelled in panic. The brat could have been lucky one time, but the next? No one can guarantee. Your luck can't be good every time. Even if Sanji was saying those words, deep down he felt that he should worry about Krieg and not about Luffy, who was closing in on Krieg with each bullet that was shot towards him by a horrified and mad Krieg. Damn it! Sanji gritted his teeth when Luffy jumped off the Barati platform, stumbling a bit into the platform where Krieg was standing alone, having thrown his crew offboard when they were trying to hold him down. With this lethal wound even, he is impossible to beat. Nah, the kid will win, Zeph said with confidence. Luffy will win. Two voices joined them, and it was of none other than the orange-haired girl and the long-nosed boy. How the heck is he supposed to win when that man is using those weapons and when the kid is himself not in a good condition? Sanji asked irritatedly, not taking his eyes off the fight. Luffy was jumping over the cannons which were being thrown at him. Don Krieg, Jin's voice came as he jumped to intervene in the fight. You lost. Please stop it. You are only aggravating your wounds. I've won every single battle I've been in. It's impossible for a brat to defeat me, Krieg yelled, throwing blood from his mouth. You are not the strongest, Luffy said calmly, coming to a halt. His hat shadowed his eyes as he said the next words. You relied on the number, on weapons, but never on strength. There are pirates far more dangerous than you in the Grand Line. His hat lifted to show his eyes, freezing Jin for a moment, before he realized what would be happening if he didn't intervene. He stood in front of Krieg, not allowing the punch to come, which was pulled back to hit Krieg. Stop it, he pleaded to the kid, believing for the first time that he could kill Don. He punched Krieg in his wound, knocking the man unconscious. We have lost. Battle Commander, the Krieg pirates yelled. Let's retreat for today and start anew, Jin said, lifting Krieg on his shoulder. Luffy nodded. He didn't like letting go of people who would hurt others the chance they got. But he believes in giving chances. So, he let them go. He jumped back to the Barati platform and walked towards Nami, Usopp, Sanji, and Zeph with his hands on the back of his head and a grin on his face. Thanks for everything, Sanji. Luffy caught the words of Jin as he started commanding the crew to leave. Don't come again, Sanji said, waving off the man while supporting Zeph. Hey, Luffy, Jin said, looking over his shoulder to the kid who halted and turned his head slightly to look at Jin. Let's meet again out on the Grand Line. Sure, Luffy said, giving his signature smile. You still gonna go there? Sanji asked curiously. When I think about it, there is nothing else that I want to do, Jin replied. This time I will do things in my way. We will get stronger before we enter the Grand Line once again. Till then, goodbye. Goodbye. Luffy waved off energetically. He could have recruited Jin for his crew, but he knew where his loyalties were. He started walking towards his friends who were waiting, but all of a sudden they felt too far away. And why were they moving up and down or left and right? Nami was happy that the fight was over. Finally, she can flee. Luffy was safe and Zoro would recover soon. So, it's time for her to leave. She was about to leave when all of a sudden Luffy fell in the water. This idiot, it was not a time to take a dip, even if he was improving in his swimming. On the other hand, Usopp felt it funny when Luffy fell into the ocean. Luffy sure knows how to surprise others, but still, something felt off to him and he couldn't pinpoint why. Meanwhile, Sanji watched as Luffy fell straight into the ocean. He had read about devil fruit eaters when he was a kid and he knew that they couldn't swim in exchange for their abilities. So, without hesitation, he dove in to save the kid who had saved Barati and Zeph's life. On the surface, Zeph was shocked when he saw the orange-haired girl and the long-nosed boy not move an inch when the kid fell. Why did you two not go to save the brat? Zeph asked, confused. He had seen the crew caring for each other, especially the little brat, but he didn't realize that they were ready to leave the kid to die in the ocean. Were they also devil fruit eaters? Couldn't he swim back? Usopp asked, confused. He had heard Luffy pestering Zoro about taking him to swim, so he was quick to realize that Luffy always could. So, he would be able to come back on his own. Why would he need to be saved when he knows to do it by himself? After all, Luffy was strong. Don't you know devil fruit eaters can't swim? Zeph asked, realizing soon enough that people in East Blue don't know that. So, he opted to explain it despite the shocked face of the orange-haired girl whose nails were digging into her palms. Those E's obtained from devil fruit are hated by the sea, and as a curse they sink in the ocean like an anchor. Zeph completed, not getting the horrified expression of the orange-haired girl, who looked ready to say otherwise but stopped herself. A few moments ago, when Sanji dove in to rescue the idiot, he panicked. 'Cause he couldn't find the brat anywhere. It was as if the brat had vanished. But he decided against giving hope and dove further down. He swam and swam, feeling himself getting at the edge. He needed oxygen but he couldn't get to the surface without the kid. Miss Nami would be upset and he could not let that happen. After a few more seconds of searching, he finally found the brat lying at the bottom of the ocean, cradled by the sea grass. His mouth was wide open, indicating that the brat had inhaled seawater. It wasn't good. Sanji picked up the boy, suddenly feeling that he was a lot heavier than he looked, but that was not enough to make him give up. He started swimming upward to the surface despite the feeling that something was not allowing him to. With a gasp he came to the surface, holding the dripping kid. He pressured the stomach of the teen, wanting the water he had inhaled to be thrown out. Has he drank seawater? Nami asked in a low voice, taking a step closer to where Sanji was trying to bring Luffy back to consciousness. Damn it! Usopp cursed when Sanji answered Nami's question with a yes. If I had known that Luffy didn't know how to swim, then great, Usopp would have brought him up faster than you did, Usopp said, trying to defuse the situation, but sadly it didn't work. No one even blinked an eye at his lie. Bring him in, Zeph said with a sigh. They needed to help their savior after all. Also, the cooks looked like they could take some rest. On it, Sanji replied without retortion. He picked up the teen, who didn't throw a single drop of seawater from his mouth and was apparently breathing, which was a miracle itself. Miss Nami even got up on her knees to follow him, only to be halted when Luffy's hand dropped and held the hem of Nami's t-shirt. Don't. Gee. Oh, Luffy said in a weak voice, his face scrunched in pain. Nami couldn't move. She couldn't do anything until a moment later when Luffy's hand fell back, swinging back and forth as Sanji took him to the room where Zoro was. Nami couldn't bring herself to leave anymore. Not after hearing a sad, wavering, and lonely voice from the energetic, charming, and adorable teen. She couldn't will herself to even move. Her hopes to leave the crew and return to her village were crushed. He will be okay, Usopp said, planting a hand on Nami's shoulder. Nami nodded, wiping the stray tears which leaked from her eyes. Yes, he is Luffy after all, Nami said as she and Usopp followed Sanji slowly. Yosaku and Johnny were helping the cooks, who were unharmed, to clean up the debris, only 'cause Zeph had threatened them to. In the meanwhile, Usopp and Nami were sitting beside Zoro and Luffy. Usopp was trying his best to defuse the situation and make it less tense. He was telling stories after stories, the only thing he was best at after his shooting skills. But it wasn't working. It wasn't making the duo get up. Neither was there any change in the duo's face, nor was Nami looking good. She looked worried. On the other side, Sanji had finally caught up to Zeph, who was ordering the cooks and the two poor souls to clean up the restaurant. Old man, why? Sanji asked, gritting his teeth. Why what, eggplant? Zeph asked nonchalantly, with a slightly raised eyebrow. You know what I am asking about, Sanji said in anger. Why would you use me as an exchange to the pirates? Why? He refused to lift his head to glare at the man rather than the floor. He didn't want to show Zeph that he was weak. Brat, that was a deal, so you need to go with them, Zeph said, wanting Sanji to understand his dream and go out to search for it. Either way, we don't need a cook like you. Usopp left, making an excuse that he needed to give food to his pet sea kings, which was obviously a lie. But Nami didn't stop him. She needed some time alone, to process everything, and it was good that Usopp was out, even if it meant for a minute. It was Zoro first, who has lost a lot of blood and no one knew when he would be getting up, and then it was Luffy, who fell without any reason. Yeah, he was looking pale from the beginning of the fight, but that didn't mean that he has to be out like light right now without any reason. They didn't took him to a doctor 'cause Luffy wouldn't like it. But his body was burning up and they don't know what to do at all. Nami and Usopp had to refuse Zeph's help when he offered to ask one of the cook, who apparently had a medical background, to look after Luffy. But what are they supposed to do right now with them down? What can make him get up? They didn't know anything about Luffy except that he has a goofy and cheerful attitude and a smile is so bright that it could make everyone forget their worries. Drops and drops of water fell on her thighs, making Nami realize that her sight was blurry too. Her hands refused to raise up to wipe her tears and chose to grip on the skirt which she was wearing. She felt helpless that she couldn't help her friends. She was useless at the battlefield. Maybe if she had helped in the fight, Luffy would be okay. Would be up, would be doing his regular works, and would have found a way to make Zoro up too. Please, she said with a choked voice, silently crying. I hiccup have. Ine. Veer sob got a single fr friend hiccup in my L life. She wasn't even able to recognize her own voice. Please. I beg hiccup you be. Oath, do don't die. She couldn't explain the tears which were flowing freely from her eyes. All she could do was cry and tell Zoro and Luffy in her cracked voice that how she was used as a slave by Arlong, how she was despised by the whole village, all cause Arlong took her, and hence never have she had a single friend, until Luffy, Zoro and Usopp came in. Even Sanji, the cook who hit on her with every chance he got, was a friend of her now. Nami harshly wiped her tears as she started telling the story of how Arlong and his crew had arrived at Kokoyashi village one day and killed her mother. How he had taken her in and used her to create his maps. How he asked money from each of the civilians in the Kokonomi Islands to give them the permit to survive. And lastly, her deal with Arlong for freeing her village, her hard work of collecting 100 million berries all to save her village. "I never want to drag you all in this," Nami said in a low voice. "I would never want you to die. I just want to leave this all and go, but," Nami said, wiping the tears, "I don't want to abandon my friends. Luffy is reckless without you, Zoro," Nami said, looking straight at the green-haired man. Zoro was the only one who could keep up with Luffy and hence protecting him most of the times, but now that he is down. "Please Zoro, please wake up for him. He needs you to look after him." Nami didn't know why was she saying those, when her own suffering was crumbling her, was breaking her. Tears started clouding her vision all again. She scrunched her eyes, remembering Luffy's words of trusting him to defeat Arlong. Remembering Zoro siding with Luffy without a single thought. Her whole body shook and trembled, as she broke into sobs. Her right arm fingers were digging into her left arm's flesh, scratching the Arlong tattoo, which showed that she belonged to them. "Why you don't know anything and yet you were ready to fight for my village?" Nami whimpered, choking on her tears. "The fight has nothing to do with you." Nami bit her lower lip to not her sobs get the best of her. "I want to leave, yet I can't," she hiccuped. Why the hell was she crying even? Why the fuck was she even telling these? Didn't she promise to never cry and never tell these to anyone? She couldn't comprehend anything. Only the words of Luffy were going on and on and on in her head. "Luffy." Nami choked, looking at the still body of Luffy. "Help me," she begged. She wanted to see Luffy back in action and not lying so pale and lifeless. Someone pulled her into a hug and her nose was hit with the smell of sea and meat, and a warmth like the sun. She knew who it was and hugged him instantly. Luffy," she choked out. "I thought you would never wake up," she stated, her worry hugging the boy who had made his space in her heart stubbornly. She. Luffy laughed bright and free, making Nami feel at ease after so many hours. "I'll definitely kick Arlong's ass." Nami wiped her tears as she was let go from the hug. "You're reckless," she said through her glossy eyes and a wobbly smile. "Thank you for being alive, Luffy." Luffy just laughed it off. "You're my friend Nami and I'll kick anyone's ass for you, right, Zoro?" "Of course, Captain," Zoro replied, having woken up just a few minutes before. "Zoro," Nami said with a bright smile and saw Luffy shout out the same name with double enthusiasm as hers and jump on the swordsman, making him grumble in annoyance. "You're alive," Luffy yelled, hugging the shit out of Zoro. "I wish I could have been dead now," Zoro said half-heartedly with a small smile, but that seemed to have made Luffy detach from him in an instant with horror-filled eyes. "Never say that. I need Zoro," Luffy replied instantly, making Zoro hide his face in embarrassment. No one had thought that Luffy wouldn't be able to understand the joke, and here he was, always doing the unexpected. Nami started giggling, which was soon joined in by Luffy, who didn't understand a thing but decided to join into Nami's happiness. Usopp and Sanji, who were listening to the conversation from the start, sported a smile from the first time they were eavesdropping. They didn't want to offend Nami, so they had just silently listened to everything that was being said. But now with the duo up, they knew things would be getting better soon enough. Great warrior Usopp is also ready to help Nami, Usopp stated, revealing himself, holding his slingshot. "It's good to see you two up too," he said to the duo, who smiled in return. "Usopp," Nami whispered in a low tune, looking at Usopp, who wasn't even shaking at all. "Sanji," Luffy said, making Sanji give up on hiding and come out. He didn't know how the teen knew that he was here, but he just ignored it. After all, he needed to check on beautiful Nami Swan, for whom he had come in the beginning after hearing Zeph's words. He can go with them only for the sake of saving the beautiful princess, just like her knight, but he has a debt to pay. He wasn't even given time to brace himself when Luffy jumped on him, saying, "Yay, Sanji is finally coming with us." Sanji got a tick mark at that. He was still angry that he was used as a bargaining chip, but when he was about to say it, stomach decided to grumble out loud. "I'm hungry," Luffy said, falling on Sanji completely, making him quickly catch the falling boy and place him on the bed which he was using. Sanji sighed. "Follow me," he said. He didn't like that someone would stay hungry on his watch. "Carry me, pretty please," Luffy said, making Sanji halt and making the mistake of looking at the puppy dog eyes of the kid. Sanji didn't know what to say at all. Should he let the monkey boy climb on him, or should he stay pissed off from him? "If you don't, I'll carry him," the swordsman said, already getting up from the bed and going towards Luffy. Sanji wasn't that heartless to let the man aggravate his wound, but it was not that made him accept the teen's offer. It was the look Nami Swan gave him. "Fine, hop on," Sanji said with fake irritation, getting a happy cheer from the kid, who jumped on his back without wasting a moment. He heard Zoro mumble that he could carry Luffy even in his state, making Usopp yell out a no, eliciting a giggle from Nami Swan, which sounded so ethereal to his ears, and a laugh from Luffy, who was swinging his feet back and forth from his back. Did he regret the position he is in? Well, Sanji will tell yes. But silently he enjoyed the jealous face of the moss-haired swordsman. The kid captain was sure adorable and like a bright sunshine, but was it okay for him to join them? To join a crew of reckless people with too big dreams, when he had abandoned his for the sake of looking after someone? He shook his head, getting rid of the thoughts, and gave the kid a piggyback ride till they entered the second floor of the Barati where the cooks ate. But there was no space for anyone to sit, but there was food. He didn't even need to ask the boy to get down. Food? The kid cheered and ran to grab one of the plate to fill food. Hey, where's our seats? Sanji asked, not wanting Nami Swan to sit somewhere else but a chair. There ain't no chairs for you, a cook said eating his lunch. Just eat on the floor, another cook supported. No chairs? How is that even possible in a restaurant? Sanji asked irritatedly, but he was halted when he saw Luffy and Zoro both carrying stacks of plates of meat and bottles of sake. Sit on the floor comfortably and start to eat. Even Nami Swan and the Usopp didn't hesitate to sit on the floor. Fine, whatever, Sanji said, giving up and filling his plate. Yummy. Luffy cheered as he ate the juicy meat. Not bad, Zoro stated, opening another bottle on sake. Shouldn't you not be drinking those? Usopp asked, eyeing at the bottles of sake which were being emptied one by one. And shouldn't you be eating vegetables and rice too? He asked Luffy, who was gobbling meat after meat. Whatever, Zoro replied. Luffy, Zoro, Nami said, giving them a smile, which made them shiver a bit. Usopp inched away from Nami, knowing what was about to come. What should you both be eating or drinking right now? Luffy and Zoro started sweating. Damn witch. All I need is booze to get better, Zoro stated, taking his bottles away from the reach of the woman. Yeah, what he said, Luffy replied, gathering meat in his arms and instantly filling them in his mouth for safekeeping. That got the two bonks on their heads. Seriously, you two, get some nutrients, Nami said, filling new plates with vegetables and rice for the duo who were scrambled on the floor, and gave them orders to finish their food which she had filled. They needed those to recover. Hey, who was the one in charge of making this morning's soup? A voice came, and that was of Patty. He was holding a bowl of soup in his hand. Oh, that'd be me, Sanji said, raising his hand. Pretty good, right? I made it especially. Gee. How the hell am I supposed to pass this crap down my stomach? What is this, pig feed? Patty asked, throwing the soup with its bowl on the floor, in process shattering it to pieces. Nami and Usopp stopped eating and looked at the commotion, while Luffy continued nibbling on meat and Zoro sipped sake away from Nami's eyes. Does human food not suit you? Damn raccoon? Sanji asked menacingly, standing up slowly. He hated it when someone wasted food or mocked off his cooking skills. This is pure crap of the highest quality. Makes me want to puke, Patty said, bringing out his tongue to show his distaste. Do you put actual shit in this or what? I'm perfectly confident about my soup, Sanji hissed. Maybe it's your damn tongue that's. Sanji got cut off when another cook, Carne, spit out the soup which he was drinking. The other cooks followed suit soon after, draining the soup on the deck of the Barati, all the complaining how terrible and horrible it was. The hell do you think you're all doing? Sanji shouted angrily. You being the assistant chef was always just a sham. It's only because you've been here the longest, Patty said, crossing his arms. If something tastes bad, then it's my right to say it's bad. Luffy could feel them lying through their teeth. He didn't like the way the cooks were acting. They were all agitating Sanji despite feeling so good after drinking the soup. He can even notice that some of the cooks had drank the whole content and added water to it, to show the draining of the soup and thus insulting Sanji. But why? Why were they acting so when they liked Sanji's cooking? Even the owner had joined it in it. What's with this disgusting soup? Is it supposed to taste like sludge or what? Owner Zeph asked after taking a sip of the soup. We'd go out of business if we served this to the customers. On the surface to the others it looked like Zeph was saying the truth, except for Luffy, who caught on what was happening. There were some people in this world who showed their love by the anger, because they didn't know how to show their love otherwise. Such was Ace. When he was small, he showed only anger as a way to show his love. So, this might be the case with the old man too. But he was older, some may say, and hence, should have a better grasp of emotions. But Luffy knew better. Age never mattered in the case of emotions. Some people can and some people cannot. It was just like day and night. Don't you joke with me, you damn geezer, Sanji shouted, instantly grabbing Zeph's cook shirt. How is this any different from the soup you make? Well, speak up. In all this commotion, the Straw Hats sat there speechless. Even Zoro was looking at Luffy with his hands on the hilt of his only remaining sword. He won't say he liked the blondie, but if he was going to one of them, then he was a friend. But with one shook of Luffy's head, Zoro went back to sipping his sake. The soup I make? Zeph asked and then punched Sanji away. Don't get cocky. The owner punched him? Patty asked with wide eyes. It wasn't a surprise with the owner beating up Sanji, but he never had once used his hands instead of legs. It sure was a surprise. It's 100 years too early for a little eggplant like you to be comparing my soup with yours. I've cooked all around the world, Zeph stated, emphasizing the last part. Luffy couldn't tolerate the act anymore once Sanji was out of the room completely sad. He got up from his seat and served himself a bowl of soup, and true to the true emotions of the cook, it was hella delicious. Wiping the delicious soup trails from his hands, he looked at the cooks and especially Zeph. "I don't get it." "What?" Zeph asked, eyeing the door through which Sanji had left. "The obvious lies which you all have been telling to Sanji since the very beginning," Luffy stated, shocking almost everyone. "What?" the cooks asked in shock. Even the Straw Hats looked at Luffy with wide eyes. They never had thought that Luffy would be someone who can catch lies, especially when he was so gullible. "You lot love his cooking and yet you tell him otherwise," Luffy stated, serving himself another bowl, and momentarily feeling that Sanji was approaching the door. "Yeah, we know," one of the cooks stated, sitting down on a chair. "Phew, that was scary. He sure was stomping mad," another all relaxed. "Everyone here knows how good Sanji's cooking is," Patty stated, serving himself a bowl of Sanji's soup. "Then why tell him otherwise?" Nami asked, looking all confused. "If you don't do that then he won't listen to us," Zeph answered to Nami before turning towards Luffy. "You're taking in Sanji, right? Taking to the Grand Line. It's his dream too." "Yep, but only if he agrees to," Luffy said with enthusiasm. He could feel Sanji freezing in shock outside the doors of the restaurant. He momentarily wondered if he was kidnapping Sanji at the end of it, but decided against it. He would ask him one last time before leaving. If he joins in then it's fine, if not, then the place of the cook in his ship will be forever open for Sanji. Outside the door, Sanji fell on his legs and sat, listening to the ending of the play the cooks played before him, only to make him realize of his dream. He can hear them asking for seconds and thirds and even force father his soup. "I can hear you. You bastards," Sanji's voice wavered as he said those words. After a moment, he got up on his legs and stood straight to witness the brilliant tapestry of ocean beneath the caressing touch of the sun. It looked as if everything was asking him to go look for the one thing that his heart desires the most to see. The all blue. His whisper got carried by the wind to the ears of someone who would make sure to protect his dream forever and help him find it. "Here I come," he said with a full-blown smile and dashed to his compartment to pack up to the new journey which awaited. To help the beautiful Nami Swan too. He turned around with a twist in his legs and faced the door, where laid the way to reach his dream. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes for a moment, listening to happy chatter from his father figure and the rest of the cooks, who were enjoying his cooking. With a push on the door, he opened the door and entered. The chatter and murmur ceased to exist. The cooks and head chef was looking at him, probably to start their drama again to push him towards his dream, but he didn't need that anymore. He has understood that he is the one who has to carry his father figure's dream and his dream forward. He has to find it. He looked straight at Luffy, his about-to-be captain. He can feel him already understanding what he was about to say from the big smile he was carrying on his face. That sure did startle him for a minute, but regardless he has a decision to announce. "I'll accompany you on your way to become the Pirate King," Sanji stated calmly, leaning against the wall of the Barati, leaving the cooks with wide mouths. "After all, we both have crazy dreams," Sanji said, remembering the time when the kid had boldly declared his dream. "I'll be the cook for your ship." "Sounds great," Luffy cheered with his hands up in the air and ran straight towards him to leech on him like a bug. Sanji sighed before face-palming himself. He was in, right? He let out a chuckle, as he felt Luffy climb on his shoulders and sit comfortably there with a bright sunshine smile on his face. "Zoro, Nami, Usopp, we finally got Sanji, yippee," he said, jumping down to the deck and running to Usopp to do their little victory dance. "He did it," Zoro said, smiling at Luffy dance with Usopp. "Yeah, he did it," Nami said with a giggle. The happiness sure was contagious, as each and everyone in the room sported a smile on their face. "That's how it's gonna be, guys," Sanji said, turning towards the cooks. "Sorry for all the trouble I put you through." Patty humphed, continuing his act. "I don't like it one bit. I wanted to throw you out of here with my own two hands, but now you decide to leave on your own? Sorry for making you put on that shitty performance," Sanji said, intentionally breaking the cooks out of their play. "Wha? You knew?" Patty yelled loud in embarrassment. "I could hear it crystal clear from outside, you numbskulls," Sanji said, looking away and seeing his captain out in the deck with the others. They would have finished with their lunch. "Now get the hell out of here, eggplant," Zeph said, making Sanji angry. "You want to so desperately kick me out, geezer?" Sanji asked angrily. "That's exactly right, lil eggplant. I've always hated brats. There hasn't been a single day when I don't regret saving a brat like you," Zeph stated, making Sanji angry further. "Whatever, enjoy the few years you have left," Sanji said, turning his back to the cooks and to the geezer to go to his cabin to pack his things. The beginning days of the Barati, when the geezer has suggested feeding anyone who is hungry. The time when he started smoking, to show that he was a grown-up. He wanted to grow up fast, all because he wanted to help his savior. The time when the cooks started coming in. The time when he got kicked for cooking crap. The time when some diners talked shit about the old man and the old man beating the shit out of some diners when they agitated his cooks. That time when they fought against some no-name pirates who tried to threaten the restaurant and all the cooks stood their ground in order to protect it. He would be leaving everything behind now, except the memories which he would carry till forever in his heart. With the help of everyone, the Mary was ready to set sail once again. It was filled to its brim with food given by the generous cooks to show their gratitude for defeating Krieg. Even Nami had hauled something, and that was none other than the broken gold armor of Krieg, which was floating on one of the wrecked platform. Adding that to her haul, she had a complete 100 million to free her village. Sanji sure is taking his time, Usopp stated, breaking Nami's trail of thoughts. Hey, he might have got lost, Zoro stated with a smirk. He can totally believe that. Nua, Luffy stated with a bright grin, as he saw the silhouette of Sanji emerging finally. He's here. Sanji walked straight in mid of the cooks, who looked at him with stern faces. Even Patty and Carne went far to literally kick him out of the restaurant with their weapon spoons, shouting that it was a payback for all the years. But it was useless, as Sanji easily kicked them to the deck. The atmosphere looked tense, with none of the cooks and Sanji exchanging even a single word. Sanji's shoes clicked on the deck until he reached the ship which will be his home on the seas from now on. Let's go, he said without turning to look back. Just like that? Luffy asked with his head cocked aside. What about goodbyes? Usopp asked from beside Luffy. Zoro leaned against the railing and took in the sights of the cooks. Even Nami was looking at them to find someone. It's fine, Sanji said, jumping on the deck of the Going Merry easily. Hey Sanji. Sanji froze with his back still to the Barati. Don't catch a cold, the voice was of none other than the geezers. As if a dam had been left open, Sanji's eyes welled up with tears falling from his eyes. Owner Zeph, Sanji shouted, turning on his heels and planting his head on the deck of the Mary. Zeph was able to see the snot and tears carefully from where he stood as Sanji kneeled down. I'm eternally grateful for taking care of me for so damn long. I shall never forget for the rest of my life the debt I owe you. Zeph couldn't control the tears, which he kept at bay and let them down finally. He would miss his Sanji, his son. Goddamn it, we are goin' to be lonely without ya, Patty yelled out through his own tears. Real lonely, you hear? Carne shouted up, as his tears leaked through his eyes. Sanji lifted his head to witness everyone's tears faces. His own tears were not stopping at all. I'll miss you. You're making us cry, damn it. Damn idiots. Men should say their goodbyes silently, Zeph stated, wiping down his tears. Let's meet again one day, you goof-for-nothing bastards, Sanji shouted out. Alright. Let's set sail. How many days will it take to reach Arlong, Nami? Luffy asked the navigator of the ship. He was sitting on his favorite seat on the Mary, looking at the vast ocean, hearing shanties carried by the wind and his mother from pirates, merchants and marines alike. Nami sighed, giving up to understanding how Luffy understands that she is here. In fact, Zoro, Usopp, and Sanji were also there. All to discuss about some things. Yosaku and Johnny had been asked to fish since they thought it was appropriate for them to not know what they were about to talk. Are you sure about it, Luffy? She asked for the umpteenth time. She didn't want her friends to be killed at all. Luffy turned around to face his friends with a big wide smile. I'm absolutely sure. His smile took a feral edge to it as he further said, he has made my navigator cry, he needs to pay for it. But he is a fishman, Nami retorted, even though she knew this was a losing match. So, it was Zoro who asked, with his arms crossed over his chest and a feral smile like that of Luffy on his face. Nami mentally facepalmed. Sure, Luffy and Zoro were both idiots. He is 100 times stronger than you all, Nami pointed out. Nami-san, I won't let the bastard live. How dare he made such a beautiful lady cry. He will pay for his sins, Sanji stated, gritting his teeth, making Nami feel lucky to have such wonderful friends. You guys, Nami mumbled with slightly glossy eyes. Hey, did you forgot that Luffy and Zoro both challenged Mihawk and have lived to tell a tale? Usopp pointed out. He was feeling that they will win this fight if Zoro and Luffy were at their side. Nami sighed and rubbed her temples. I seriously still don't know how that happened, and heck, Luffy challenged the warlord and came out unscathed. Seriously, I don't know anything about it. Nami then looked at Luffy, who was grinning wide, and said sternly, but we won't go straight off to the fight. Why not? Luffy asked, cocking his head to the side. Well, I think we should avoid fighting if at all possible. The single sentence made the color come back in Usopp's face, who was a little bit frightened about the fight. With what I got from Krieg's armor, I think I have enough to buy back the village, Nami said, determined to save the crew from Arlong's wrath. The rest of the money is buried under the tangerine grove. We can dock the ship near my house, and I can get the money to hand over to Arlong. Okay, Luffy said, understanding most of the part of the plan, but if it doesn't work then we'll just beat them up. Dear Nami Swan, you look so pretty while making plans, Sanji gushed before turning to Zoro, who grunted in dissatisfaction. What was that, you mosshead? Curly brows, Zoro said with a glare and then proceeded to say, whatever, I still think it's naive to think that we'd get away without a fight. I don't think that fish is going to keep his word at all. "We'll try Nami's way first," Luffy said, cutting off any argument which would have arose between two, who were about to declare each other as their sworn enemy. "Fine," Zoro relented, leaning against the railing. His chest wound wasn't hurting much anymore, but it still itched whenever he moved too much. "I have a question," Sanji said, lighting a cigarette. "Why didn't anyone take you to a doctor when you fainted?" He was curious about it. Since he can clearly see that the crew loved the youngest, but what was with them when he fainted? They left him clearly to die. Nami, Usopp and Zoro exchanged a look and looked at Luffy, who decided to look away from everyone's eyes and look straight at the vast, quiet and calm ocean. But the question was Luffy's to answer, so Luffy scrunched his face in distaste and replied, "I hate doctors." He had never needed one, and whenever he went to one, they started looking at him like he was not normal, except Ivankov and some other guys, only because they were used to him. "We learned it in a hard way that taking Luffy to a doctor is a bad news," Usopp replied Sanji's question, making him raise his eyebrows and think of the possible tantrums a kid can throw regarding not seeing a doctor. But well, that gave the idea of getting a doctor in the crew. It was important. A doctor who Luffy wouldn't be afraid of and most importantly would trust too. "How are we supposed to help you when something get wrong with you?" Nami asked immediately. She didn't want to see Luffy all pale again ever in her life. "Don't worry about me," Luffy stated with his signature smile. But that wasn't enough for them right now. "Listen Luffy, you are our captain," Zoro said in a serious voice. "What kind of crew are we if we do not know when and how to aid our captain?" "Zoro thinks too much," Luffy said with a soft smile and jumped off his seat for Mary. "But if something like that happens, then don't worry, I'll be up soon." "Come to think of it," Usopp said, making a thinking gesture. "Why did you faint in the first place?" He had this question in his mind from the very first time he had seen the team faint after Kuro's fight. That time, they all can blame to the eerie transformation, which still gave him chills. But this time nothing like that even happened. Luffy pouted at the question but nonetheless replied, "First, I got the winds to get Mary safe to the other side, and then when Zoro was fighting, my anger made the lightnings to crash, which further drained my energy," he replied nonchalantly, not even looking at the widened expressions of everyone. What? Usopp shrieked, not understanding a thing. "I thought devil fruits gave users only one type of power?" Sanji whispered with widened eyes. "How did you control them?" Nami asked with baffled expression. "How does lightning and wind has anything to do with rubber?" Zoro asked the next, unable to curtain his curiosity. He clearly remembers Luffy being hesitant to say anything about his powers when they first met, but he couldn't have even imagined this. In all this, Luffy had started sweating and had put his hands on his mouth to keep quiet. He was again too late to realize that he shouldn't have said those. But he trusts his friends. But what if they run away from him due to fear? This all indicated to the Straw Hats that Luffy was not lying at all, which they desperately wished that he was doing. But they clearly remembered the lightning. Also the crew in the syrup village remembers the blood-curdling thunder which had announced its arrival, which had scared the shit out of some of them. Everything was coming to peace slowly. Nami understood why she was never able to predict them, cause they were not natural. They responded to Luffy. They were controlled by Luffy. Well, that's a lot to take. "What is your devil fruit, Luffy?" Nami asked. Her eyes were slowly filling with horror and awe. She couldn't tell what she was feeling at all. It's not like Luffy didn't trust his crew, but it's just that he didn't want some bastards to know yet that he has returned. So, he tried lying. Rubber. But he failed miserably under the gaze of his friends and crew, and in return got disappointed looks from his friends. He hated it, so he decided to say it, but before giving them a warning. "The name will make you the worst target of the world government itself. Do you still want to know?" Luffy warned in a low voice. He didn't want to make them face problem this early on, when they were not ready for the madness which would be the new world yet. Luffy turned to look at his friends, to burst out laughing. Nami and Usopp were completely pale, as if they have seen a ghost, while Sanji and Zoro were able to keep their faces calm, but inside they were a bit panicked. But he could tell each one of them wanted to know more about his powers and him. It was Sanji who decided to break the silence. He took a drag from his cigarette, took a breath and then looked at Luffy. "The name is going to come out sooner or later, so I don't care about it much," Sanji stated calmly. "But for my dear Nami Swan's safety I won't be asking." "Luffy, we how," Zoro said calmly, getting up from where he was sitting and facing directly to Luffy. "So, it's your choice, but know it that I'm with you regardless of anything." Luffy giggled at that and let a soft smile settle on his face. He knows he can trust his crew more than anything. After all, he has the best crew in the world. "I renamed it as Hito no Mi. Model Nika," Luffy stated with a giggle. "It sounds better than the name the world government gave it to hide it." "That's way different than the Gomu Gomu no Mi which you told us," Nami pointed out, forgetting the fact that now that she knows the name she is one of the worst target of the world government, but someone looked like he remembered it. "WWE Jew just became targets for the world government," Usopp shrieked, paling rapidly, and it was then when Nami came in and realized what had just happened. "Ah!" Nami screamed, getting hold of the situation. "I don't want to die young." She cried as she fell on her knees just like Usopp, and they cried together in fear of getting hunted by the world government. No one knows we know it. Zoro's sweat dropped and pointed it out, making Nami and Usopp realize that and quickly look at their vicinity for any marine ship. All the while Luffy couldn't control his laugh and burst out laughing. "Don't worry my dear Nami Swan, I'm going to protect you." Sanji yelled out and noodled his way to Nami to protect her from any unforeseen danger with hearts in his eyes, only to get "pervert cook" from Zoro. He was about to yell at the swordsman but got pounded on the deck by Nami Swan's so smooth fists. Luffy chuckled and swore that day that no matter what, he is gonna protect his friends from anything that they face. He wants to see them so lively always. "Wait, what do you mean you renamed it?" "Oops," Luffy said with a chuckle and ran away to the kitchen to grab a snack for himself, being chased by an angry Nami and Sanji who was following Nami. Even Usopp was running after him, and Zoro, while he was leaning on the railing and watching him with a soft smile on his face. This was one of the best days for Luffy, playing tag with more than half of the crew. She. It was late night when Luffy crawled out of his hammock, after checking that everyone was indeed deep asleep. Even Zoro, who had been exercising, even after hearing shouts from both Nami and Usopp, was fast asleep. He had wanted to go to his mother in the early evening, but he couldn't do that with Yosaku and Johnny on board, who clearly knew that devil fruit users can't swim. Technically, he isn't a devil fruit user, as the humans mostly say, so it doesn't affect him. And why will Mama even hate him? She hates the beings who have gone ahead and two. The moon shone brightly above him, making him realize that he was on the deck already. He smiled and went ahead to sit on his favorite place. The spirit of Mary appeared before him, making him greet the little ship spirit. "Hello, Mary." Mary giggled and flew around him. "My greetings, little king." "Ah," Luffy stated with a pout. "Don't call me little king, we are Nakama." Mary tilted her head just the way Luffy was used to do. "But what shall I call you then, my little king?" "Call me Nika or Luffy," Luffy whispered, standing on the figurehead of Mary. He can see his mother waiting patiently for him. "So be it, Nika-sama, have a good evening," Mary said with a giggle and disappeared, making Luffy pout. He didn't like to be addressed that way. It makes him feel way too old, but it's okay if Mary likes to call him that. With that thought, Luffy jumped in his mother's arms, which cradled him instantly. The warmth his mother's cold arms brought to him was indescribable. He so loves it, because he knows that at some point, he wouldn't get it. "Little king, will you play with us tonight?" Nika giggled. He sure wasn't sleepy, so Yash. He can play all night with his little friends in the water. So, that was how Luffy passed his night, playing tag with the little fishes who swam so expertly. Luffy sure needs to get his swimming lessons with Zoro, cause he doesn't want to cheat with his friends with his mother's help. The early rays of sun hit the Marian in midst woke up the cook. When Sanji woke up, he saw that Luffy was not in his hammock. He shrugged it off, thinking to himself that the kid might have went ahead and raided the kitchen, since he obviously looks like the type to do that. He might scold him, but he would make him snacks later before the breakfast. But when Sanji arrived in the kitchen to find it just the way he had left, he felt a little worried. So, he quickly went off to the deck to look for his little captain. And fortunately, he found him lying on Mary's figurehead sleeping soundly. He took a breath of relief, which he was holding at the sight of his captain well. He took his steps back and went back to the boys' dorm to fetch a blanket for the teen. He didn't want to get him sick, especially when his captain hated doctors and straight off refused to see them. When he was about to place the blanket to cover the teen, he found something unusual. Luffy had sand particles clinging to his skin and hair, making some unusual markings like a tattoo. "Don't bother," a voice came, making him flinch a bit. He turned around and glared at the moss head, who caught him clearly. "What do you mean?" Sanji asked while glaring at the swordsman. "I meant don't bother to question him about the sand," Zoro stated, coming closer and finding the patterns. "You know about it," Sanji stated in a low voice. He didn't want to wake Luffy up at all. "Yes, it's the 7th time he has got sand out of nowhere on his skin and hair," Zoro stated with a sigh. Zoro won't associate himself with a morning owl, but whenever he had woken up early than Luffy, he had found him with sand littered on his body, which always made some weird patterns on him. Even one time, he had asked Luffy about it in hell. He really wishes he hadn't heard the absurd answer which had came out of nowhere. A yawn cut Zoro and Sanji off their thoughts and made them turn towards Luffy, who was sitting up and rubbing his eyes. The sand which had covered him was slowly slipping away, making the onlookers feel that they never existed in the first place. "Good morning, Zoro, Sanji," Luffy chirped with a bright sunny smile, making them reciprocate it. "Good morning, Luffy," Zoro and Sanji said at the same time, making each of them glare at each other and Luffy to giggle. "I'm hungry," Luffy said with a whine and looked at Sanji. "Sanji, food." "It will be ready in an hour," Sanji said with a sigh and went ahead to the kitchen to cook. Luffy yawned again and blinked his eyes. He had just slept for 10 minutes. He felt a bit tired from playing the whole night with his little fish and sea king friends. But the night was fun and he didn't regret it. "Go back to sleep," Zoro said, seeing that Luffy wasn't able to keep his eyes open. Luffy responded and made grabby hands. He has always been carried to bed by his father or brother when he felt tired. What are you, a baby? Zoro grunted, seeing Luffy using puppy eyes on him. Please, Luffy said with a little whine, and unknowingly or knowingly his eyes looked just like a kid puppy. I'm tired. Fine, Zoro grunted, turning around to let his captain, who was acting like a baby, to hop on. Thank you, Zoro, Luffy whispered, instantly falling asleep and giving Zoro a tick mark. Who the hell sleeps that fast? Zoro yelled. Not getting an answer, he sighed and walked to the boy's dorm to settle the boy, who instantly clung to his shirt, not allowing him to leave. Zoro sighed and threw a pillow for the boy to cling with instead of his shirt. He watched Luffy snuggle into the pillow and got himself comfortable before falling still and sleeping. He was becoming a babysitter, wasn't he? Zoro sighed and left the dorm to do some exercise. An hour later, Luffy was already awake and playing with Usopp, after getting a quick morning snack from Sanji. Bree announced saving Usopp from being caught in the tag as Luffy made a beeline for the kitchen, forgetting the game of tag they were playing. Usopp, can you wake up Yosaku and Johnny too? Sanji asked, but was beaten when Zoro came down from the crow's nest with Johnny and Yosaku. It didn't take long for everyone to gather at the kitchen table. The breakfast was as jovial as it was yesterday, with Luffy attempting to get more food from others. We will reach Kokonomi Islands by night, Nami stated, breaking the little chatter which was going on. She wasn't able to get her to stop shaking, and here everyone was chatting as if they were not going to fight with fishmen soon enough. That's too long, Luffy whined, making Nami look up from her plate to Luffy, who didn't look scared at all. Just one more day then, Zoro said in a way to reason with Luffy. Wait, I have an idea, Luffy said, shoving his remaining food in his mouth and running off from the kitchen. What is it this time? Usopp asked in a low voice. All of Luffy's ideas, which he had witnessed till now, were insane. He doesn't want another insane idea coming out of nowhere. Moo! A loud cry went off, making Usopp visibly flinch, followed by the ship lurching sideways and crashing of many plates. Zoro didn't waste any moment in getting out of the deck with Sanji on tow. But the rest of them decided to peek from the door of the kitchen to the outside deck, not wanting to get caught up, or were rather not given the chance to get out since the door got blocked with their heads. What the hell is that idiot doing now? Nami shouted from the door. I don't see how arguing with a Sea King is a good idea, Usopp whimpered. Johnny and Yosaku whimpered in agreement from where they had taken refuge after seeing Luffy gesturing wildly at the Sea King. That's Momo, Nami shouted out so that Luffy could hear. He's with Arlong. Momo, Luffy said with a feral grin. Do you want to be my food or pull this ship and take us to this Otong guy? Momo flinched, looking at Luffy. He couldn't even meet his eyes with him. The sea cow gave a loud moo, but his voice clearly trembled. Luffy's smile turned big and wide as he heard the sea cow to agree to his demand. The sea cow lowered his head to bow to the little king, making Luffy turn around to give his crew a peace sign and a wide smile. He said he'll give us a ride to Nami's island, Luffy announced. There was a moment of silence before they all finally found their voice to yell out, What? Momo will take us to Nami's village, Luffy repeated with a huff. Why? Usopp wailed. He didn't even want to be in vicinity of a Sea King. Because it'll be faster, Luffy reasoned with. It could have used his wind powers, but he doesn't want himself to be drained while fighting the Arlong guy. Moreover, he can't control it well yet, sadly. Luffy, he's with Arlong, Nami tried to talk him out of it. So? Luffy asked, picking his nose. So? Nami screeched, squeezing out her way out of the door and finally giving up. It was Luffy after all. Fine, do what you want. Zoro came back to the deck carrying some ropes to help Luffy tie Momo up to the ship. He had gone after hearing Luffy's argument with Momo of taking them to Arlong. Luffy easily tied up the Sea King to the ship and sat on its head and kept encouraging the sea cow to go faster and faster, clearly enjoying the ride. Is that safe? Usopp yelled worriedly to Zoro as they picked up a speed which made everyone grab onto something. What if he falls? Everyone on the ship knew that Luffy couldn't swim, and with the new revelation that devil fruit users can't swim, there was another mystery surrounding Luffy, who can practically stay in water without sinking. Heck, the kid was even trying to learn to swim. By the time the Kokonomi Islands were starting to get visible, Momo looked visibly tired and out of breath, but he continued on at the same speed in his hurry to get rid of the sheer danger he felt himself in. After all, the little king never liked the ones who sided with injustice. Ag! Usopp and Nami screamed, we are going to crash. I don't want to die, Yosaku and Johnny yelled in tow, clutching each other. Make him stop, Luffy, Zoro even yelled from his place, holding the mast of the ship. Damn cow. Stop the hell. Sanji shrieked the next and was starting to regret about his decision to join the crazy captain in the first place. But he wouldn't trade it for anything soon enough, and he knew it. Hey, you stupid cow. Stop, Luffy shouted, and the cow froze in an instant. But due to the momentum which he was going, the ship lifted from the water several feet high, making the Straw Hats, including Yosaku and Johnny, scream for their lives. But due to some miracle, The ship settled on the sea soon enough, making them fall on their knees and cry out of the sheer fear they had just felt. She. Luffy laughs freely, after all he had enjoyed the ride the most. Shut up, the crew shouted, getting their breaths steady. It was one of the scariest rides they had ever been to. Especially the last part when they were nearly about to be thrown off the merry but were saved only by a miracle. You damn, stupid cow, Sanji shouted after getting to his legs. How dare you hurt my dear beautiful Nami Swan. But the sea cow wasn't stupid enough to stay a moment longer before the crazy crew and its captain. How the heck did you even convince a cow to do that? Usopp asked with a shout, not understanding the thing in the first place. Luffy just giggled, ignoring Usopp's question and shouted with his hands overhead, off to Nami's village. He didn't wait for anyone and jumped off the ship, laughing gleefully. They would follow him soon enough, and he wasn't wrong when the others soon followed him, not wanting him to get into any trouble or in Zoro's case not wanting Luffy to get lost. Nijiko was reading newspaper when she heard a knock to her door. She hated it whenever there would be a knock, because that would usually mean that Arlong's henchmen were back to ask money in place of her life. Regardless, she got up from the table and opened the door to find Nami standing before her. Nami, Nijiko let out and quickly enveloped her younger sister in her arms. Nijiko. Nami whispered back and Nijiko was quick enough to hear the real smile within the words. She separated herself from her sister and looked at her smiling face. She was really smiling. How long has it been since she had last seen her sister smiling? It had been a decade. We are going to get our village back today, Nami said, getting her sister out of her trance. Nijiko's eyes widened and her lips quivered a little. You finally got it? She asked in a trembling voice. Yep, Nami said with a brilliant smile and stepped aside to show her a group of people. My friends helped me in my last haul. Friends? Nijiko asked with shock. Nami had never made friends, and even if she made them, she betrayed them. But she could feel that this group had given Nami the thing she always wanted. She couldn't express her joy at all. Guys, meet my older sister, Nijiko, Nami said, pointing to Nijiko and making Sanji gush about how beautiful her sister looks. And Nijiko, they are Luffy, Zoro, Usopp, Sanji, Johnny and Yosaku, she said, pointing each of them, making Nijiko nod to them. Nice to meet you all, Nijiko said with a little bow. She couldn't tell how grateful she was to them. But nonetheless, there are other things to do right now. Nami, what's your plan now? They will help me carry the treasure to Arlong, and then Arlong will leave for good according to our deal, Nami said with determination. Okay, Nijiko said. I'll see ya soon then, she said and ran off to somewhere. Meanwhile, Nami pointed out the graves which were to be dug in order to get the treasures she had collected. Her first thought was to go to Arlong and then tell him the place to collect the money, but on second thought, she doesn't want Arlong or his henchmen coming near her house. Ash will finish it for once and all. On the other side, Nijiko ran until she neared the Kokoyashi village where the villagers had gathered and were paying off their taxes. Everyone, she shouted, after she saw Chu going back to Arlong's park. Nami has done it. She has finally done it, Nijiko repeated with a big smile on her face. What? Are you saying it for real, Genzo? The village chief shouted back in excitement. Yes, she has even got friends, Nijiko replied happily. I was so worried for her when she had started working for Arlong for our sake, but Grandma said, wiping her tears of joy. I'm so glad she had gotten someone. Me too, Nijiko replied happily. Let's go to the Arlong park and see our freedom for ourselves. Genzo cheered out, making the villagers cheer back and march to the Arlong village. Arlong was sitting on his throne and enjoying the wine which one of his crew had brought from somewhere when someone pounded on his door. That got his attention, especially when after one more punch to the door to his park flew wide open. Oh, so you're back, that was quite a long trip, Arlong said, stirring his wineglass and looking at Nami. Is that so? Nami asked with a sarcastic voice. I see that you have brought some little friends along with you, Arlong said, and wondered how he would be working them like slaves. He lifted his eyes and froze. That was when he noticed that none of his crew was making a movement. And he knew the reason. It felt like a superior being. A predator was among them, waiting for one wrong move of theirs to snap off their lives from them. Arlong gulped and carefully looked at each one of the friends Nami had brought along with her, when his eyes landed on the little kid with a straw hat on his head. He wasn't able to move for a second with the look the boy clearly looked at him with. Arlong knew it instantly that the kid was not a kid. Heck, he wasn't even a human. He felt like the sea which was a home to the fishmen and just like the sun which they had always longed for. And yet, Arlong could tell it was not the sea and the sun in the normal and pleasant days. No, it was the raging sea and the scorching heat of sun which he can feel radiating from the boy, to them, for them, warning them. Arlong took a deep breath and gulped down his wine, forcing his heart to get on a steady pace again and not panic. Whatever the boy might be, he is still a kid. A little kid who is powerless to defeat him, since fishmen are superior beings. Arlong, enough is enough now, Nami yelled with a fire in her eyes, which had been eradicated since Belmere had died. Take the money and get the hell out of the village." That snapped Arlong and the others out of their fear and made them look at the bags which Nami and her little friends threw before Arlong. The little friends Nami had made were glaring at him and the others, even if one was shaking to his boots. He will admit he was feeling scared of the little kid, but not anymore. He looks all weak and scrawny as someone looks him close by. Heck, he can say the blonde and the green-haired swordsman who looked the toughest in the group might be the strongest, but they were no match for him. Shahahaha. Arlong laughed and stood up from his throne, forgetting the danger he had felt. He walked towards Nami and her little friends who had helped her. He placed his hand over Nami's shoulder and the girl didn't even flinch like she used to. Arlong felt disappointed. Nonetheless, he looked ahead and saw the hopeful eyes of the villagers who had gathered just a moment ago. How good would be crush their hopes in an instant with his words? That thought made him feel so good from inside that he couldn't help but laugh loudly. Shahahaha. Shahahaha. Arlong laughed in a mocking tone. Money? Village? Free? It's a complete 100 million berry as I promised, Nami vocalized without an ounce of fear. Is that so? Arlong questioned with a dirty smile on his face. Thanks for the money. The whole crew of Arlong started laughing after that, making Nami and the villagers look utterly confused. But the Straw Hats had got what the captain of the Arlong pirates meant. Oh, Nami, you see, I never planned to free your village, Arlong spouted, soon enough clearing the confusion from everyone's faces and sat on his throne with a mocking look on his face. What? Nami asked in a horrified voice. But why you promised me? Liar. Give back our village. Don't you see how much Nami suffered due to you? I'm done not fighting, we are done being weak. We will take you down, Arlong. The villagers shouted one by one, making Nami's legs give under her. She couldn't comprehend what she was witnessing. She had known in a part of her mind that Arlong would never uphold the end of the promise, and yet she had worked hard in the hope of finishing this, freeing her village, without a fight. Men, kill them all. I don't need them anymore, except for her, Arlong ordered, and Nami heard the pounding steps of her people, of Genzo, of Nijiko, of everyone. Their war cries, their anger, everything, she heard it all. And no, Nami whispered. No, don't do it. You all will be killed. Nami choked on, but the villagers didn't stop. The fishmen were cracking their necks and knuckles and she could clearly fathom the ending result. But she couldn't lose them, she just couldn't. We can't let you fight this fight anymore, it was Genzo who shouted. Run, Nami, while you can, Nijiko yelled the next. Luffy, Nami mumbled, knowing he was the only last hope left, who could save everyone, who would bring freedom to the village. Genzo and Nijiko went past her, but none of the Straw Hats even moved a muscle except for Yosaku and Johnny, who were torn in their own battle of what to do and what not to. Luffy, Nami shouted with tears flowing from her eyes. Help me, help them, please, I can't let them be killed. A hat was plopped on her head and in an instant Luffy stretched his arms to catch the villagers who had ran ahead to tackle the fishmen on their own. Of course, I will help you, Nami, Luffy yelled and his arms snapped back, throwing the poor villagers back, making them shout in fear. Take care of the hat for me till then, he said, giving her his signature D-grin. Nami nodded while hiding her face with the straw hat to hide her tears. Finally, we are doing it, huh? Zoro asked with his hand on the hilt of his sword. Yash, Luffy stated with his hands in the air. Johnny and Yosaku, keep the villagers at the bay. Aye, Johnny and Yosaku replied instantly and turned on their heels to not allow any villager to pass through, crossed their swords, which acted as a barricade to prevent the villagers to get anywhere near the fight. Usopp, give us cover, Luffy commanded Usopp the next. You can do it, he added with his sunny grin. Alright, Usopp replied, taking out his slingshot and adjusting his goggles on his eyes. He will show his shooting skills to save his friend, he can do it. Zoro and Sanji, we are on, Luffy said with a feral grin and made a beeline for the main person. Roger. Aye, Captain, Luffy grinned as he started walking towards the man who had boiled his blood, the one who was sitting on his throne like a king. Arlong, Luffy stated in a chilling voice. His anger was completely directed on Arlong as he started approaching the said fishman. You are so dead. I see, Arlong replied nonchalantly, ignoring the chill which was running through his spine. Just what the hell are you, kid? He couldn't help but question it. I'm not a kid, I'm a pirate, Luffy replied with his glare fixated on Arlong. That was a surprise to the fishmen and the people who were listening on. The fishmen, cuz they couldn't believe a little kid was a pirate, and the villagers cuz Nami had brought pirates in their island. But they trusted Nami and her choices. Hey, you stop, a fodder fishman said, standing in Luffy's way. Heh, where do you think you're going, kiddo? Another said, blocking Luffy's way. Luffy was pissed off. These fishmen were the most ignorant ones he had ever seen. Move it, Luffy growled, lifting his head and aiming daggers at the fishmen. But he didn't need to move a muscle as Zoro and Sanji both slashed and kicked the fishmen out of Luffy's way. Didn't you hear what he said? Zoro asked with a feral grin, jerking off blood from his blade. Deserves right for you shits, Sanji said the next, taking a swig from his cigarette. That was surprise to the fishmen as their brethren fell with one move. Just what the hell are you even trying? Arlong asked with a smirk next, avoiding to look at the steely look which he was getting. Even if the swordsman and the blonde was tough, they couldn't hurt him. Luffy didn't reply and steadily kept walking to Arlong, with his eyes glaring at the fishman. With one led before Arlong, who still refused to acknowledge his presence. Lightning cackled in the sky as Luffy let loose his anger by punching Arlong. Arlong crashed straight to the wall and beyond. Ag! Arlong! The fishmen shouted in confusion, seeing Arlong crashed on a tree, bleeding from his mouth and his face distorted. The villagers watched with shocked expression as Arlong didn't make a single move. He was not moving. Don't you dare make my navigator cry, Luffy yelled with the thunder which made its presence in the midst of the battle. His face was nothing sunny, yet he looked like he had emanated from hell itself. Like the devil or a force of nature waiting to bring judgment on the fishmen. This was the time when the Straw Hats were forced to acknowledge that Luffy hadn't sprouted any lies. He can control lightning and will thunder. They were after all seeing it all in action. The winds which were howling in rage, the thunder which represented Luffy's anger were cackling madly in the sky, and the clouds which rumbled beyond their comprehension. If that spectacle was not enough to make the fishmen falter, then the Conqueror's haki, which was bleeding out of Luffy, sure made the fishmen take a step back. If someone asked where the fishmen would likely want to be right now, then they would probably say that anywhere but not near the kid. But they refused to let go of someone who disrespected their captain, and hence they ignored the dread which crept on their backs. "Wyu? Howdy dare you?" The fishmen yelled as they charged directly to Luffy, but that was of no use. They couldn't even bypass Zoro and Sanji, who slashed and kicked them aside without wasting a second. "Geez, running in head first alone like that," Sanji stated with his hands stuffed inside his pocket. "Don't worry, I ain't gonna lose," Luffy said with a grin, feeling Sanji's worry clearly. "Dumbass. When did I ever say I was worried for you?" Sanji asked, looking away. "I only meant that you shouldn't hog all the glory for yourself." "Oh," Luffy said, cracking his fingers. But he could tell Sanji was lying. Well, he wouldn't extend this conversation. "I don't particularly mind either WWA, Luffy," Usopp stated with his hands on his hips and sweating with fear. "Ain't you gusty?" Zoro's sweat dropped. But inside he was worried for Luffy, just like Sanji was. He didn't want Luffy falling, with all the thunders and lightnings which were cackling in the sky. "Isn't that Roronoa, Zoro?" one of the fishmen asked, clearly recognizing the pirate hunter. Meanwhile, the villagers were shocked to their core. "Just who exactly are those guys?" a villager asked. To be able to send Arlong flying back with a punch. That's not something a normal human could do. "The heavens," an old lady whispered, looking at the glorious sky which was rising hopes within her heart. "They want to exterminate our suffering today," she cried as she witnessed the fury of the nature itself taking revenge in their place. "Those guys," Nijiko whispered under her breath, holding onto Nami, who was clutching on her like a baby. "Who are they? If even those guys can't do anything about these fishmen," Yosaku started. "Then East Blue has no hope," Johnny finished it. They were itching to fight, but they knew they can't beat a single one in the state they are right now. "If you wish to interfere with this fight, then you'll have to kill us first." That was the only thing they could do, protect the villagers. "For what reason do they go so far?" Genzo asked with gritted teeth. "'Cause they made Sister Nami cry," Johnny said without missing a beat. "Is this not the best reason to risk our lives?" Yosaku asked as he added onto Johnny's words. Nami couldn't help but cry on those words. She trusted that Luffy, Zoro, Usopp and Sanji can defeat the fishmen, and yet there was a sense of fear within her for them. After all, they were doing these all for her, risking their lives. The villagers couldn't help but feel hope grow inside them, which they had thought that they had lost it. Hope that they would be free once again, free to do anything which they want and not pay for their lives. "Shashashasha, Arlong," the shark fish man laughed, even if he coughed out some blood. "Just how could 4 measly humans defeat me?" But before the Straw Hats could reply, a Fizman who looked like an octopus yelled out, "You idiots! As if Arlong would fight the likes of you, I'll turn you all into fish food. Come out, beast!" "It can't be," the villagers said with anguish. Their hopes felt like slipping away from them once again, if what they thought was going to arrive. Some even fell on their legs, not able to move as the water level started rising, announcing the arrival of the sea beast. "WWW, what's going on?" Usopp asked in fear, but the others didn't even break a sweat as they stared at the rising waters. "Come out, Momu," the octopus fish man yelled out, announcing the arrival of Momu. "The sea cow," Usopp said in relief, wiping down his sweat. "Moo," Momu mooed, but the next second it froze and started sweating heavily. "You again?" Luffy asked, crossing his arms. "So he's one of them, huh?" Sanji asked for his cigarette. Mahamo began crying. He couldn't stand any more of the pirates and the little king, who was throwing his glare at him. So, he did what he felt was the best. He turned tail and started going. "Momu, wait!" the fish octopus man yelled out. Where are you going?" But Momu didn't want to wait a second here. He shook his head relentlessly as he started going away. He didn't want to acquire the wrath of Momu. Momu froze once again when Arlong called out his name in a low and threatening voice. "The hell do you think you're doing? Well, if you were going to." "Momo." Luffy cut out Arlong's words and made Momu bow to Luffy in an instant. That shocked most of the fishmen who didn't anticipate this at all. "You're free to do whatever you want." Momu started tearing up and replied, "Mu? I won't be angry," Luffy replied nonchalantly, waving his hands. The events were shocking most of the fishmen along with the Straw Hats who didn't know what was happening at all. Even the villagers were shaken to the core. Momu didn't need to think much after that. Little King was the strongest one and he knew it. Stronger than Arlong and his words. So, he chose to run away and never do anything that will piss off Little King. The fishmen were not feeling good about it. They had known from the starting that the kid was different, but with the sea cow taking the kid's side instead of Arlong's, that was a big issue. "So be it," Arlong stated, with his eyes shadowed. He can see fear taking root inside of his men due to the events. Due to the kid, who single-handedly drove them to be anxious. "Don't be afraid of the kid, men. He is nothing but a kid," he said, standing up and dusting his pants. Aye, Captain," the fishmen responded. "Men charge," a fishman yelled as everyone started charging towards the four measly humans. Sanji gave a grin. Zoro gave a smirk as his hand went to the hilt of his sword ready to take it out, and Usopp raised his slingshot high in the air ready to attack. But they didn't need to. "Don't waste my time. Gomu Gomu no." Luffy growled as he flung his leg, which in turn stretched, taking down the fishmen easily, flaying. The attack flung the fishmen here and there like meteors, making the villagers shout when one of the fishmen fell near their vicinity. "A devil fruit user, huh?" Arlong muttered. "I didn't come here to fight these small fries," Luffy announced, standing his ground. "The one I want to beat up is you." He pointed his finger and turned his gaze to Arlong. "How excellent," Arlong stated. He was pissed off. "I was thinking of finishing you myself." "Seems like we have no choice but to fight," a grayish fishman, whose name was Kurobi, said with his hands crossed over his chest. "How dare you hurt our brethren?" the octopus fishman said, getting all riled up. His name was Hachi. "Looks like we needs the difference between our races," a fishman with big lips said. His name was Chu. "Looks like the main force is out to meet us," Zoro said with a smirk, happy to finally get someone who can be worth fighting. He had been itching for a fight.
"That was way too dangerous," Sanji yelled as he had seen a fishman just fall over his beautiful Nami swan. He had been on time there to kick the fish away and hence protecting the defenseless ladies.
"Are you trying to kill us even?" Usopp shouted the next. A fishman had landed directly on him, making him scream for his life, until he realized that the said fishman was unconscious. But that experience had literally had his soul come out of his mouth. "Oops," Luffy said with a little giggle. He didn't look sorry at all for the mistake, pissing off Sanji and Usopp more in the process. How the hell did he command that monster from the Grand Line? A villager spoke in complete shock. "What a power. Those guys bet the fishmen like this," another said in shock, seeing the strength of Zoro and Sanji. Even Usopp's shooting skills had impressed them to their core. "To think that there would be humans who can handle fishmen," another villager spoke in disbelief. "Is this really a battle of our world?" Genzo asked in shock. He couldn't believe how the events were turning just before his eyes. "If this was how things were going to turn out, we should have fought from the beginning," Kurobi said, crossing his arms. He could care less about the humans standing before him, except the kid who he didn't want to mess up with yet. "Arlong, please just sit right there. If we let you fight while that much anger, all of Aurong Park will end up destroyed," Chu said, looking at Arlong, who was gritting his teeth. "Take this," Hachi announced. Zero field of vision. "That octopus is doing something," Zoro said nonchalantly. "First boil the octopus in salt water, slice it up, and add some olive oil and paprika to make an excellent side dish while drinking," Sanji said nonchalantly. These two didn't look like they were about to battle the commanders of the Arlong pirates at all. The only one who looked like he had an idea of the situation was Usopp, who was far away from the fishmen with his slingshot. "That would taste awesome," Luffy replied to Sanji's words with drool dripping from his mouth. "Takahashi Black," Hachi shouted his attack as black ink targeted the Straw Hats. "Octopus ink." But unfortunately, Hachi's attack didn't work at all, as Luffy, Zoro and Sanji managed to dodge the ink easily. On the sidelines, Arlong was getting pissed off. Hatred was making its place in his heart stronger than ever. These humans were not ordinary humans who shitted in their pants with just the name of the fishmen or the Arlong pirates. No, they were insane. Especially the kid, who didn't appear to be human at all, except for his appearance. He felt like the sea and yet he refused to cooperate with them. He smelled like the sea and yet he had devoured a devil fruit, to make the sea hate him and refused to accept it and chose humans. He was a traitor to Arlong. And yet, Arlong couldn't help but acknowledge that the kid was stronger. The punch he got square on his face proved it. Arlong's heart wanted nothing more than to hear the painful shrieks of the kids when he will tear his heart from his very own hands. He wanted nothing else than to break the kid and make him his slave, to torture him for the eternity. Hatred, anger, greed, disgust. They were clouding his vision, his heart and his mind as he stood up. He saw Hachi beat Roronoa Zoro, and yet he saw how the kid was the one who was changing the flow of the battle, even if Hachi looked like whining. He saw how Karubi faced bravely against the blonde guy and the kid support him. He saw Chu running after the long-nosed teen and how the kid gave his best wishes to him. He couldn't handle anymore. He didn't know what was wrong, but he felt that the battle would change and it would be all 'cause of the kid. He deserves to die. Die. You son of a devil, Arlong yelled, as he let his madness and insanity take over him and charged head onto the kid. He had a plan in his mind, which he was committed to do. He would drag the devil fruit user to the very sea which hates him. But he would not let him die. He will torture him for eons. So you are finally ready, huh? Luffy grinned as he saw Arlong and felt his rage all directed towards him. He couldn't help but learn his plans due to sheer instinct and his observation haki. Humans are weak. They are inferior to us, the fishmen, who are superior. Arlong yelled as he dashed and dashed towards Luffy, who couldn't help but burst out laughing at his thoughts alone. Zoro's eyes landed on Luffy for a second, while he was blocking the 8 blades of the octopus with his single blade. Sanji stopped mid-air for a second in his fight with Karubi to glance at Luffy and then Arlong. They both can feel the bloodlust coming from Arlong, which was solely directed towards their captain, who was laughing in the face of the present situation. Don't interfere, Luffy said, cracking his knuckles and with a wide grin stretched on his face, especially to Sanji and Zoro. Do you seriously think you can win against us? Arlong shouted in fury, while his eyes changed. Arlong Park is done for, Karubi stated with a sigh, punching Sanji away who was distracted, but Sanji did a backflip and stood his ground, ready to tackle the fishman again. He is done giving up. You bet I think so, you idiot, Luffy said with a smirk as he punched Arlong straight in his jaw, shattering his teeth completely. Arlong's eyes changed. The villagers yelled. They're the same eyes that a sea king has when it goes berserk, Sanji said, looking away from his fight. That's the first time I've seen those eyes, Nami said in shock, holding Luffy's straw hat. Arlong started laughing as new set of teeth started growing, shocking every human further. How dare an inferior human do this to me? A fishman? Do you know what hopeless difference is there between you and I? He asked, rushing towards Luffy in fury. Nose? Or jaw? Luffy asked, cocking his head. Is he joking around? Usopp yelled in panic, afraid about Luffy. No, I think he's serious, Johnny said confidently with a sweat drop. Webbed hands. Luffy said, pointing his finger. It's a race, Arlong yelled as he attempted on biting Luffy. And yet Luffy danced around those easily. Arlong wanted nothing more than to pull or push Luffy in the sea, for mocking him. He will show who is the strongest of all to the puny human. He bit off the pillar, Yosaku yelled, as he saw Arlong snapping the pillar by his jaw alone. If he got bit by it, his bones will be crushed, Sanji stated through gritted teeth, but he couldn't focus on that fight when he himself had a fishman who was looking for opportunities to snap his neck off. This is the power that we fishmen are born with. A power that the heavens did not bestow upon your race. Arlong was cut off by Luffy. Geez, you speak a lot. Fishman this, fishman that. Heavens this, heavens that. Man, I'm tired of your ramblings. Luffy said, cleaning his ear with his finger and punching a pillar just like Arlong did to showcase his power. The pillar broke in an instant, throwing the debris far away. Nice one, brother, Yosaku yelled. That's right, the end result is all the same, Johnny supported. You humans truly are idiotic. Weak, pathetic race. What can you do? Arlong asked in fury as he dashed towards Luffy furiously. You can't even save yourself from drowning. It's because I can't do anything that I need help, Luffy replied nonchalantly, but he meant each word. I don't know to fight with swords. Zoro stood up again after falling to his knees due to the dizziness and fever he felt. I don't know a thing about navigation either, Luffy yelled, catching Nami's attention. I can't cook, Luffy yelled, making Sanji stand up again, after getting a taste of the fishman karate, which made him fly past T. Can't lie either, Luffy shouted, making Usopp look at Chu with determination, who was about to attack Zoro. He raised his slingshot and shot the fishman, making him the center of his attention. I'm confident that I wouldn't be able to survive if other people aren't there to help me, Luffy yelled out loud, making Arlong laugh. Aren't you quite honest admitting how worthless you are? Arlong shouted. You call yourself a captain and yet you don't even have an ounce of self-confidence. Just what the hell can do you, kid? I can beat you, Luffy stated with a confident grin as Arlong attacked him. Luffy punched him back, but in the mishap, Arlong did the one thing he had planned to. He caught Luffy's hand and dragged him to the waters as he fell to it. Luffy, Zoro shouted immediately. He knows that Luffy can swim, but his swimming isn't good enough to compare to a fishman. Luffy can barely stay afloat in the water for a few minutes, That was the main problem. You bastard, Sanji growled, as he turned his heel from the fight. Ready to go after Luffy. I'll go S. Zoro caught Sanji just at the right moment. Wait, you dumbass, Zoro yelled, stopping him. Don't act rashly. Going into the sea is exactly what these guys want. There's only one way to save Luffy right now. You mean we have to beat these guys to a pulp on land first and then jump into the sea? Sanji asked, taking a swig from his cigarette. Fine by me. Let's do this, Zoro and Sanji said together, as they charged to their opponents. The remaining fishmen pirates started laughing loudly as they saw Arlong's fin swimming rapidly in the ocean moments after. You think Arlong will be defeated? Karubi asked, dashing towards Sanji, who raised his leg. Don't let your guard off. Your opponent is here, Hachi said, attacking Zoro, who slashed him, making him bleed instantly. On the other side, Yosaku yelled to his friend, this is bad, Johnny, brother Luffy's in trouble. He won't be able to do anything in that situation, Johnny replied back. Luffy, Nami whispered. Ichi will be fine, she said, remembering that Luffy knows to swim. He has been training with Zoro ever since she had met them. He has to be fine. She trusts him. Meanwhile, in the depths of the sea where Arlong and Luffy fell to, shocking events started to take place. Did you think you can best me here? Luffy asked, cocking his head, while sitting in a criss-cross position in the ocean. How the hell are you able to do that? Arlong shrieked in confusion, ignoring the question. Even he needs to swim in the ocean, but yet the kid before him was sitting in the waters as if they were not draining his energy. You're a devil fruit user. Heck, you shouldn't even be able to talk underwater. Devil fruit user? Luffy mumbled. Gone was his cheery attitude. Gone was the goofy teen who wanted to show Arlong that races didn't matter at all. There was a devil sitting right before Arlong right now. Yes, you are, Arlong shouted in fury, as he started attacking the kid who was approaching him by walking in the ocean in a slow and steady pace. Fishman karate. 1,000 bricks. None of his attack hit the teen as he dodged it skillfully, just like the ones in the New World did, with the power of observation haki. Do you think you can attack me in my own territory? Arlong laughed, hiding his panic behind it. He couldn't be defeated in the waters. He is invincible here, despite the fact that the kid was same as him. He was thinking that the kid was a half fishman, a disgrace to all fishmen. Arlong will kill him, no matter what. Your territory? Luffy asked, lifting his head a bit. One of his eyes shone a pure scarlet color in the dark waters, which was illuminated by his mere presence. For a half fishman like you, you don't belong anywhere, Arlong shouted in fury as he dashed towards the kid, wanting to show the true power of the shark fishman. Luffy's red eyes started glowing fiercely. The little fishes, and the sea kings awaited in the dark at a safe distance, waiting for the order of their little king to finish the insolence excuse of the fishman, who showed his fangs to Niko. Arlong's jaw connected to Luffy's shoulder, which was allowed by Luffy himself. Is that it? Luffy asked, when he felt Arlong froze. His golden blood was flowing in the water, blending with it to patch up Luffy's wound the instant Arlong let go of Luffy's shoulder. Who are you? Arlong asked. He could feel his entire body trembling. The being before him neither was a human nor a fishman. He was a devil fruit user, and yet he wasn't. He was a kid, and yet he could feel from those eyes that he wasn't. Arlong had never been so scared in his entire life like now. She. Luffy laughed, kicking Arlong in his stomach and making him hit a wall. Arlong coughed out blood. He was terrified of whatever was standing before him. Luffy was feeling satisfied with the fear and acknowledgement which Arlong was going through. But he deserves more. More for making Nami cry. Before that, Luffy's eyes fell on the sun, which was engraved on Arlong's heart. What does that symbol mean for you? Why do you have that? Arlong wiped the blood from his mouth. He could feel himself getting dizzy, but he didn't want to be defeated by someone who was an anomaly to him. He couldn't afford to, even if it was scaring him. Why you don't need to know, Arlong shouted as he mustered up all the courage he had and started swimming at a fast rate towards the kid. Luffy looked at the sun symbol again and scooted his eyes, trying to remember where he had seen that one before. Do you understand just how angry I am? Arlong shouted in fury, trying to override his panic by it. The seething rage I felt after seeing my beloved brethren be crushed by you pathetic insects. With the speeds I can attain underwater, nobody can stop me, Arlong said to the ignoring Luffy, who was trying to remember why the symbol was making him want to remember something. Shark on darts, Arlong yelled, swimming in a faster rate to pierce Luffy, who wasn't even paying attention to him. On the land, in the Arlong's park, Zoro stumbling. His wounds have started to reopen. He wasn't yet healed, and here he was up fighting an octopus, but he wasn't one to give up. His wounds are just too deep. They haven't healed yet, Yosaku yelled as Zoro fell face first on the floor. Obviously, it's a wound that would disable a man for at least half a year, if not kill him, Johnny added. Was he enduring the pain all this time? I knew something was up when he acted normal even after receiving those wounds. That moron, Sanji gritted his teeth. He can't believe that Zoro had been doing exercise in this state. Does he want to die so badly? Unfortunately, due to Sanji's distraction, Kurobi managed to land a hit on him, square on his chest, making him fly through the villagers. I warned you before not to look somewhere else. I'm a 40th level fishman karate practitioner, Kurobi boosted. That's all taken care of, Kurobi said, looking in the waters, yet he can't see a single thing. No movements. He was getting a bad feeling about all this. I just can't wait for Arlong to finish off his little game. Nyuuuuu, Hachi roared, from where he stood with his 6 blades. You have really pissed me off. I'm going to butcher you. Did you know that aside from one man, I, Hachi, of the 6 sword style, am the #1 swordsman in the Fishman Island? Even if the heavens were to be flipped over, you would have no chance of beating me. Who are you trying to fight, Hachi? Kurobi asked Hachi in a bored tone. A low snicker was heard and arose a man. 6 swords style. Don't make me laugh. Just what's so great about that? Zoro stood firm on his legs, despite the wounds which were bleeding and making his fresh bandage turn scarlet red. He stood despite the dizziness which he felt. Let me tell you something, you little octopus. I've got a man I have to meet no matter what, and until I meet him. Zoro faced the octopus with fire in his eyes. Not even the Grim Reaper can take my life away. Yosaku. Johnny. Lend me your swords. Zoro asked, and in an instant he had an affirmative from the duo. I'll kill you. Rorinoa Zoro, Hachi roared in anger. Zoro untied the bandana from his left arm, while giving a low snicker to Hachi's threats. What's the matter, Rorinoa Zoro? You look so exhausted, Hachi taunted, seeing Zoro clearly at his brink. That's none of your concerns, Zoro said through his sword, as he tied the bandana on his head. It was time to take things seriously. Brother, catch! Johnny and Yosaku yelled at once, throwing their sword at Zoro, who was feeling like he would pass at my moment now. He could feel his body's temperature rising tremendously, yet all the choice he had before him was to fight. He can't lose this match. B brother, we already threw our swords, Yosaku yelled desperately. Didn't you ask for our swords? Catch them, Johnny followed, as he and Yosaku saw Zoro standing in his place and making no attempts to catch the blades, which were spiraling towards him at a tremendous pace. I'll show you the vast gap in skill that's unsurpassable for a human with only 2 arms, Hachi declared in anger. The 6 sword style that can only be used by having 6 arms and a supple body. Brother, watch out! The swords were just about to hit Zoro. Kokoyashi Kaiken, Hachi announced as he dashed towards Zoro in frenzy, while Yosaku and Johnny began crying when Zoro made no attempt to catch the swords, which were only a few inches away from his head. But surprising all, Zoro twisted his body and caught the swords, simultaneously countering Hachi's attack. 3 swords style. I'd like to see you try to take on my barrage with only 3 swords, Hachi yelled as he furiously began attacking Zoro, who dodged each and every attack of his and went past him. Toru Nagashi. Zoro finished. Not even a second later, Hachi screamed in pain as his chest was wide open and bleeding, but Hachi was not going to give up. You've ally made me mad now, Hachi yelled in anger, dimming the cheers from the villagers and the duo. I swear I'll kill you. Just think about it logically. There's no way you could beat my 6 swords when you have only 3. Logically, his sword. Seems like you've made a big mistake in your calculation, Zoro said as he remembered the words of Hawkeye. What are you burdened with? What do you desire at the limits of your strength? I may have only 3 swords, but the weight of our swords are completely different, Zoro said, despite the burning fever, which was making him sweat. The weight? You mean to say that your swords are heavier than mine? Don't be stupid, Hachi yelled out, not realizing what Zoro meant in the first place. You may not realize it just by looking at them, but each of my swords weighed 300 kilograms. They're far heavier than any swords that you puny humans use. Zoro huffed and said, I have nothing to say to an idiot like you. That seemed to have done one thing, that is agitate the octopus fishman more. 6 swords style. Octopus pus pod stance. A barrage of attacks were aimed at Zoro by Hachi, and consequently one attack was directed to his wound, making Zoro cough out blood instantly. Hachi didn't stop at that. He threw Zoro in the air, and declined to give even a safe landing to him. He started twisting his swords, while Zoro had his eyes closed in pain. I'll make you a mincemeat, Hachi yelled. Brother, Yosaku and Johnny yelled at once, with tears and snot. Zoro. Nami yelled for the first time. She really shouldn't have brought them here. But that wasn't required as Zoro slashed Hachi's swords away and stood his ground, while Hachi's swords clanged to the floor. That bastard, Hachi growled, as he picked his swords despite his bleeding hands. I really can't forgive you anymore. It's time to finish you off. Meanwhile, Zoro's blood was dripping drop by drop on the ground, making him feel dizzy, yet, he couldn't afford to pass out now. 6 swords style. Octopus pot stance. Hachi yelled as he brought his blades together. Time to die. Zoro took his stance. Even if his wounds were normally enough to kill him, he can't afford to die. This technique is 100% unavoidable, Hachi yelled in his dash towards Zoro. Just like my attack before. Zoro crossed his arms, ready to attack. In order to beat that abnormally strong Hawkeyes, he can't afford to be normal either. That was what he came to conclusion, as he yelled out his attack, Demon Slash. Hachi's blades broke to pieces. Now do you understand the difference in the weight of our swords? I hope you're satisfied, Octopus, Zoro said through his swords, preparing for the last attack. Tatsu. Takoyaki punch, Hachi yelled, not giving up. Maki, Zoro yelled, cutting Hachi and making him fly in the air. Zoro sheathed his sword, as Hachi fell to the ground with a thud, unconscious. I have to hurry up and save Luffy. Roronoa Zoro. How dare you cut down Karubi yelled as he was about to punch Zoro, who was sitting on the ground, clutching his wound. A kick landed square on Karubi's hands as Sanji appeared in the scene backing Zoro. You sure did punch me back pretty far. There's actually a human in East Blue that can live after taking one of my punches? Karubi asked in shock. I'm sure there are more than just me, Sanji said through his cigarette confidently. Especially at a certain restaurant. It seemed I'm being underestimated, Karubi said. Gotta save Luffy, Zoro said huffing as he tried to near the sea. Don't, Sanji stopped Zoro. With your injuries, you'll end up dying if you jump into the sea. Shut up, Luffy can't swim properly. He can't hold his breath properly, Zoro said, as the world started to spin around him. I don't have time to wait for your fight to end. I know, Sanji said with a smirk on his face. I know that better than anyone, so say no more. Zoro looked at Sanji with a raised eyebrow, but in response Sanji kicked off his shoes and his jacket. I'll go in so you can quit your complaining, Sanji yelled as he dove in the water, without any hesitation. Kuhahahaha, Karubi laughed. How interesting, a human dares challenge me to an underwater battle. You dumbass, Zoro yelled. That's exactly what they want you to do. And that was true as Karubi jumped right after Sanji. On the other side, Usopp laid in a pool of his own blood. That was more trouble than it was worth, Chu said looking down at Usopp. How the heck can he run away so fast? But that still wasn't enough to save him. A quick death from a single blast of my water gun. Chu started walking off, thinking that Hachi and Karubi should have taken care of those trash by now. Meanwhile, Usopp, who was laying on the pool of ketchup he had made for escaping situations like this, sighed in relief. He wondered what he will say to others when he gets to them. I should cover myself with some dirt. That'll make me seem more like I was in a fierce fight, Usopp said to himself, lapping dirt on his skin. He wondered what excuses he can make. My bad, but I ended up losing, Usopp thought. Aren't we crewmates? Luffy's innocent face came up. Or maybe, damn it, that guy barely got away from me, Usopp thought sitting up. Don't cry, Nami, it was only natural for us to try and fight. I'd rather die, Zoro's words with Mihawk repeated in his brain. We've all fought well. It's still a 100 times better than being in a crew that would harm a lady, Sanji's words when Luffy was acting all dumb and made problem for them in the Mary. It was a real close fight to the death. For the sake of my business, this was the only way, Nami's tears and her words when she was telling how much she had endured. No number, my wounds are nothing to worry about, Usopp's voice was wavering. We trust you, brother Usopp, Yosaku and Johnny's words when Usopp led Chu away from Arlong's park. Let's fight, the villagers' yells of fighting for their freedom. Well, if I were to seriously fight, Usopp mumbled as he made a cocoon of himself. His hands stopped covering him with mud. Tears fell drop by drop in the muddy ground. I'm so pathetic, Usopp thought as he wiped off his tears and stood, despite his shaking legs. Stop right there, you freaking fish, Usopp yelled through his tears, making Chu stop in his path. What, so you were still alive? Chu asked as he looked at Usopp through his shoulders. From the moment I took one step outside my village, I should have thrown away all notions of peace or safety, Usopp thought as his shaking hands pointed to the fishman. As if a little attack from some half-fish bastard could ever hit me, Usopp yelled out. Usopp was realizing many things. He had been hiding in the shadows of the crew. He had solely agreed to join Luffy cause at first he had thought that he would be safe with him. But now, he was realizing that is not what he joined for. He wants to laugh from the bottom of his heart just like everyone in the crew does. Just like Luffy. That's why he decided to go out to the seas as well. Cause he wanted to be able to smile and laugh like they do. Usopp pulled out his slingshot and loaded it. He realized that if he doesn't fight seriously right now, he doesn't have the right to sail on the same ship as them. Nor would he have the right to laugh with them. With tears in his eyes and a fire, Usopp yelled, certain kill, flame star. Fire arose from Usopp's attack, but Chu was fast enough. As if that'd work on me, Chu said punching Usopp straight on his nose. Would have been better if you have just pretended to be dead. But I guess you're too dumb for that, Chu said looking at Usopp's pathetic state. It's over, Usopp said in a wavering voice. Damn right, it's over for you, that is, Chu said as he began kicking Usopp in stomach. It's over, Usopp repeated, as he brought out a hammer from somewhere. Usopp hammer. He hammered Chu's legs in an instant, making Chu scream in pain. Usopp took the chance to stand on his own legs, and brought forth a rubber band. Usopp rubber band. He yelled as he flinged that rubber band straight to Chu's face, who instinctively closed his eyes. Usopp took this chance to hide, so when a pissed-off Chu found no one in his vicinity, except a bottle of rum flying towards him. "That damn bastard," Chu said in anger as he caught the rum with one hand. As his attention was on the rum, Usopp used this chance to attack him and break the rum bottle on his face through his shooting skills. "That inferior human and his idiotic stunts," Chu said, wiping the rum from his face. He bent down to the paddy field which was nearby and started sucking water. "I don't know where you're hiding, but I'll blast you out of your hiding spot with this field's water." "It doesn't matter if it's stupidly or cowardly," Usopp said to himself, kneeling on the ground and hiding behind a tree. "This fight isn't something that the man Usopp can just run away from. I'll die if I lose. I'm already a real pirate." "Water cannon," Chu yelled as he blasted a portion of trees, shocking Usopp. "Why the hell do I have to fight an idiot like him?" Chu questioned when he clearly saw Usopp looking at the destruction which he made by coming out of his hiding place. "I'll pump you full of holes," Chu shouted, 100-shot water gun. "Ag!" Usopp screamed as he held his head for protection. "How'd he know where I was? Damn, I'll show you. My former Usopp pirate members and Kaya. I've left for the seas and become a pirate." Usopp knelt on one leg as he took out his slingshot. "And so I'm going to fight. Because one day I'm really going to become a brave warrior of the seas." Usopp yelled with a fire in his eyes. "The carefree fun days I spent plowing pirates are over." The tree behind which Usopp was hiding was kicked, making Usopp roll to the ground. "What did you say was over?" Chu asked, holding a tree in his hand. "Our fight," Usopp said with determination, targeting Chu with his slingshot. "Did you know that alcohol is flammable?" "Certain kill flame star," Usopp shouted, and in a moment Chu started burning, and hence ending the fight for good. When Sanji dove in the water, surprise can be a word which cannot be said with what he was seeing. Luffy was drifting in the water like a normal human who can swim easily, and then there was Arlong coming towards an unaware Luffy who looked lost in his own thoughts at a tremendous speed. Sanji regretted opening his mouth in an instant, but that seemed to have snapped Luffy out of the trance, who blinked at him and gave a peace sign. Sanji understood the meaning, despite the questions which spiraled in his brain. Sanji dove upwards, feeling satisfied that Luffy was not hurt or anything which he had thought him to be. He needed to finish the match from his. A punch greeted Sanji's neck, making Sanji open his mouth once again and inhale the seawater. "What the heck is happening here?" Karubi asked, looking at Arlong trying to attack the brat but the brat dodging it skillfully, like he wasn't even a devil fruit user. "Arlong, stop playing with your prey." "Shark on darts," Arlong yelled as he dove after Luffy, who was acting like he was swimming before Sanji. Karubi was starting to dive towards the brat, in order to help his captain, when he felt someone holding his legs. Sanji didn't know what was going on, but he knew one thing: he can't let the fish guy attack Luffy too. "You want to fight me underwater?" Karubi asked, raising his eyebrow. But before any of them could do anything, a wave of water threw them both out of the pool. "What was that?" Karubi asked, getting up on his legs, while Sanji took a huge gulp of air. "Hey," Zoro asked instantly. "Don't worry," Sanji didn't need to complete even when Arlong's and Luffy's body hit the Arlong Park, and hence they came out of the water. "He's fine," Sanji said with a sigh. "I can see," Zoro said with a sweat drop. "What happened? Was he hit?" Usopp shouted. He had just arrived a moment ago. "No," he bounced himself away from Arlong, Zoro leaning against a pillar. "It's time I kill you," Sanji shouted, pointing at Karubi. "He needs to finish his match soon, to take a dumbass to elsewhere, or rather to a doctor." "I shall kill you with my fish man." Sanji was too pissed to even give an ear to listen to the babbling which the fishman was doing before him. "Collier," Sanji shouted as he kicked the fishman in his neck, making him fall face first in the ground. Sanji was way too pissed, and the falling stones from the Arlong's park did nothing more than make him worry about a certain idiot who was breathing heavily and leaning against a pillar that can crash anytime. "Epile," he shouted, kicking the fishman on his face. "What did you say you would do?" Sanji asked, kicking the fishman again in his legs just as he stood up. "Coatlet, Sell, Poitrain." A series of kicks, all targeted at the fishman, was made by Sanji, shocking the villagers. Karubi wasn't even given a chance to talk or attack. It seemed like a one-sided battle. "Mutton shot," Sanji announced, giving the final kick, making Karubi unconscious. A few moments earlier, Arlong got a grip on his kirabachi, his weapon which looked like a huge saw, and started chasing after Luffy. "Oh, do you think you can beat me with that?" Luffy asked in taunting voice, as he skipped in his path and avoided Arlong easily. He was having fun, the least to say. Arlong was completely fueled by the rage. He had forgotten the fear which he had faced moments ago. All he knew that he would defeat the brat. It didn't matter to him that he was destroying his own Arlong's park by his two hands. He would kill the kid no matter what. Do I hear him laughing? Usopp asked while in shock. His eyes were traveling between Sanji's and Luffy's fight. In one place, Sanji was barraging the fishman with his kicks while Luffy was playing around with the berserk fishman like a toy. What a monstrous bunch, he shivered at the thought alone. Mutton shot. Sanji's voice came, snapping Usopp from Luffy to Sanji, as he saw Sanji give a final kick to the fishman and rush towards Zoro, who protested for a moment. Usopp forgot his cowardice and rushed to give a hand. Stones were falling here and there, threatening to crush anyone who would get nearby the park, and yet the idiot, Zoro, chose to lay there. He's not stopping, he's chasing after him all the way up. The villagers shouted as they witnessed the battle. We need a doctor, Usopp yelled as he and Sanji brought Zoro near Nami. Not now. Zoro pushed away them and leaned against the wall to look at the fight. He trusts Luffy to win.